Hello guys, and welcome to our JavaScript crash course. My name is Zeno and I'm going to be taking you through this course. I'm quite excited to be part of your JavaScript journey, right? So the way we started this crash course is that we did a quick crash course on HTML. So if you want to do a quick refresher on your HTML, we have a crash course for that on the channel. And then we did another one on CSS, okay? So that's also available on the channel. And now we're going to do a JavaScript crash course. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to try as much as I can to make this course as easy to understand as possible, okay, so that an average beginner can actually benefit from this course, okay. So that's my goal for creating this course, okay. And I'll try as much as possible to make sure that the fundamentals and the basics you learn about JavaScript in this course you can apply to build projects. So in this course we're also going to build projects as we learn, okay. So it's going to be a very practical course. You learn the fundamentals, you learn the basics, and then you apply that knowledge to build projects, okay. So so if you think this is something you want to appreciate me for, I would actually like you to leave a like on this video and just leave a comment on the video, okay, to help me, this video get to other people on YouTube. Okay, I really appreciate that and I want to thank you so much for that. And also, before we get started, I want to quickly say that if you take this JavaScript crash course, or if you even know the fundamentals and the basics of JavaScript and you just stumbled on this video, then I'd like you to know that I have a course, a project-based course on JavaScript. It's called 100 Days of JavaScript, okay. In 100 Days of JavaScript, my aim is to help you sharpen your JavaScript skills. So if you don't know anything about JavaScript, you can take this crash course here on YouTube, and then you can, if you want to advance your skills in JavaScript, you can actually take this 100 Days of JavaScript course where you would build projects every day for 100 days. I am confident that at the end of that course you're going to be a better JavaScript developer. Now I'm going to leave a link in the description for you to take this course. And let me point out something, right? If you actually want me to benefit from you purchasing this course, like if you really want to support me, please use the link I leave in the description. That's like the only way I actually get to earn what you actually paid for the course, okay. So I want to thank you so much. I also have a course on HTML, CSS, and Sass. If you're interested in that, I have another one on Git, okay. All right, thank you so much for supporting me. I really appreciate you, and let's get started. All right, so now the next thing you need to do is you need to have Visual Studio Code installed on your machine. Okay, so if you don't have that, I don't expect that you will not have Visual Studio Code if you are taking a JavaScript course. I mean, you should have done HTML and CSS. Anyway, you should have a code editor, but if you don't, just search for download Visual Studio Code, and the very first result you get should bring you to this page where you can simply just download Visual Studio Code to your machine, okay, whatever kind of operating system you use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for Visual Studio Code, right? And okay, great. So I have Visual Studio Code opening up. Oh, this is a project I'm working on, so I'm just going to open a fresh Visual Studio Code. All right, so this is a fresh Visual Studio Code I have open up on my machine. Now what I want you to do is there are some extensions that like you are going to need that will make your life a little bit easier. So if you come to this extension tab here, click on it, right? And the first extension I need you to install is called Live Server, okay. So this very first one by Retweet Day, I already have it installed, but if you don't, just go ahead and press the install button or click on the install button, right? The next one I want you to have is Live Runner, right? I think, yeah. Oh, Code Runner, not Live Runner, Code Runner, okay. So basically what this Code Runner will do is that it will help you to be able to run your JavaScript inside of Visual Studio Code, right? If you need to do console.log, you can easily do that inside of Visual Studio Code, right? I'm not going to do that every time because, I mean, sometimes the plugin misbehaves, right? Okay, but I just want you to have it installed. Then the next one I want you to have is Prettier, okay? So let me just write it out. So Prettier, I think. I hope I spelled it correctly. Yeah. So Prettier is a code formatter. Let me expand this thing so you can actually see the name. Yeah. So you can see prettier code formatter. So go ahead and install this one by prettier. That's the plugin author, at least the name here. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay, then there's one more I want you to install. Like there are four. The next one is bracket pair colorizer. So bracket pair colorizer, right? That's the fourth plugin I want you to install. All right, do install the very first one. As you can see, there's bracket pair colorizer. So just go with the first one, right? So those are the four plugins I want you to install. So as far as using Visual Studio Code is concerned, I think we are ready. Okay, so in the next one we are going to talk about something else. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about JavaScript before we get practical. Okay, so I'm just going to drag this slide here, and it's important for me to start with the fact that JavaScript is the most commonly used programming language, and I got that information from Stack Overflow 2020 survey. Okay, JavaScript was created by Brendan Eich in 1995, and basically it helps you add functionality, dynamicity to your web page / web apps. So in the previous lectures we said that HTML, right, helps you create the structure of a web page. CSS helps you add style to the web page. So let me just quickly bring up that slide, right? So here, right, so we said that HTML helps you bring up create structure, CSS helps you add style, JavaScript helps you add functionality or logic to your web page or web applications. Okay, all right, so currently we're in the JavaScript part now, right? So now JavaScript can be used to create websites, web apps, mobile apps, and if you have some knowledge about web development before coming to this crash course, you know that web development is largely divided into two. There's the front end and there's the back end aspect of web development, right? JavaScript can be used in both front end and back end, and we're going to see that like later in the course. JavaScript can also be used in machine learning. Okay, for that we have TensorFlow and stuff like that. Okay, so JavaScript is so important to learn in 2021, and it will always be relevant. Well, let me not say always be relevant, but it will be relevant for a really, really long time. Okay, now JavaScript jobs are in high demand. Okay, if you're proficient in JavaScript, just know that you are having a very high income skills that people will always want in a long time. And also there are different frameworks and libraries that make your life easy as a JavaScript developer. There are so many of them, but the very common ones are React, Vue, Angular, and Svelte. Okay, so I think that's about it. I think that does it for the introduction. So what we're going to do is that I want us to get really practical and really fast in the course. Okay, so let's continue. So what we're going to do now is, let me just get rid of this slide, and we have our code editor open, just a blank code editor, there's nothing in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a file on my browser, okay, just on my desktop here rather, and I'm going to call that file JavaScript. Okay, so I'll just call that file JavaScript, right? And what I'll do is I'll just bring up my code editor. Excuse me. Let me minimize the code editor, and I'll just drag this folder inside of my code editor. Let me close this getting started. So I'll drag the folder and drop it inside of my code editor, and it should open up that folder in my code editor. But don't forget that folder is an empty folder. Okay, so I'm going to close this. So you see here we now have JavaScript. That's the folder we dragged in. So basically what I'm going to do is I'll just click on this folder and I'll add a new file. So new file, and I'll name this one index.html. Okay, I'll hit enter, and then we have it opened up here. And then I'll create another file, and I'll call that file script.js or maybe app.js. Okay, and I'll hit enter. Okay, you can actually name the files whatever you want. Okay, but well, this is what we have. So now inside of my index.html, right, I'm going to create a quick HTML boilerplate. I'm going to do this using a plugin called Emmet. Okay, and I think I did not talk about Emmet in when I talked about Visual Studio Code setting up and all of that. So basically, Emmet is a plugin that helps you write HTML faster, or that helps you write code faster, and it comes pre-installed with Visual Studio Code. So if you click on manage, right, and you click on settings, I think, right, in this settings you can just search for Emmet. So I'll search for Emmet, and I'll see an option here that says edit in settings JSON. So if I click on that option, it will bring me to my settings.json file. It's just a file where there are some settings, okay, and somewhere on that file you should see something. Let me just expand this. That looks like, let me just, okay, great, I found it. So this line here that says emmet.trigger expansion on tab, right, mine is set to true. If yours is set to false, just go ahead and change it to true, and that will activate Emmet on your what's it called, your Visual Studio Code. If it doesn't even exist at all in your settings.json file, just type it out exactly the way it is here, and you'll be able to do everything I do with Emmet. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this file because I really don't need it, and I'll not bother saving. I'll close the settings. So basically, because I have Emmet installed, all I need to do is write an exclamation mark and hit the tab key. If I do that, I'll have this HTML boilerplate. Okay, now I have my app.js here, right? So let's talk very briefly about how we can incorporate app.js, right? There are two ways you can add JavaScript to your file or to your code, right? Okay, the first way is simply by adding it in your HTML file. So if I say scripts, right, I can put my JavaScript inside of what's it called, this, between the opening and closing script tag, right? I can put all of my JavaScript there. But let me just quickly say at the beginning that that's not a good idea. Okay, right? You can also incorporate JavaScript inside of your markup. Okay, but the ideal way to write JavaScript is by putting it in a separate file. Okay, that's why we created this app.js. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a script, and that script will have an attribute called src. Okay, just like we have src attributes in images, in an image tag, HTML tag. So in this src is where you then add your JavaScript file. In our case, our JavaScript file is app.js, so I'll just say app.js. okay, and then I'll save. Okay, so now we have this app.js connected to this index.html file. Okay, that's how you connect your JavaScript to your HTML. Okay, but what we really want to talk about in this one is how you can run JavaScript in your browser. JavaScript is a scripting language, right? It can be run in the browser. So let me just bring up my browser here. Oh, let me close this up. I don't need it anymore. And I'm just going to minimize this guy here, and I'll open a new tab. Okay, great. All right, so remember we have live server. What I gotta do now is that I'm going to open this my index.html page with live server. Permit me to close this tab here. Now let me come here and add, let's just say a h1 that will say hello world. Okay, and I'll save that. So what I got to do is I'm going to right click and I'll say open with live server. Remember that plugin we installed? Let's see how that plugin helps us. So this is the page, index.html page I have here, and because I opened it with live server, if I make any change, let me just add a paragraph and say, let me just say JavaScript is awesome. Okay, I'll save that, and because we have live server, it automatically reloads the page and we now have this updated content on the page. Okay, so that it makes our lives a lot easier. Okay, now how can we run JavaScript in the browser? Right now there is a there's a developer tool that Chrome comes with. Okay, this is Chrome browser, by the way. I don't think I said anything about Chrome browser, right? So this is Chrome browser. So if I right click and I select inspect, right, watch what happens. So let me expand this. This is the developer tool, right, on Chrome browser. You can either choose to put it at the bottom of your page or even at the side of the page, right? But I prefer the bottom because I'm going to make my browser very small. If there's these three dots at the end here, if I click on these three dots and I can choose the position I want to put my developer tool. So I'll say dock to right. I'll click on it and it will put that tool on the right. Okay, so this is the tool on the right, but because I'm working with a small browser, it doesn't make sense to have the tool on the right. See the way it is. So that's why I'll just right click and say dock to bottom, and then it puts it at the bottom. Okay, so here I can easily see my developer tool and my page on top. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on console. Now it's on elements, right, and we can see some styles and all of that. But if you click on console, you'll see a fresh console here, like a fresh space where you can type out something. So I can type out something here, right? So but if I come to my app.js, right, and if this is your very first time of learning JavaScript, right, you don't have to worry about what I'm about to do. But I'm going to do a console.log, right? I'll do a console.log, and I'm just going to add what is known as a string in JavaScript. Here I'll say hello world, and watch what happens. I'm going to save. Now if you look very well at the console, you see that we now have a text here, hello world, which is the exact same text we added in our console.log. So basically when you're when you're writing your JavaScript file, you can do a lot with this console.log, right? But another thing is that even in this console.log, you can write something and expect the output right in your page. So the same way, let me just come here. I'll just do alert, right? And here I'm going to alert hello world, or maybe I'll just alert hello just to make it different, and then I'll save. Watch what happens. So the page loads and we have this alert that says hello, right? I'm sure you've probably seen this in maybe website or applications. So if I click on OK, the page loads and it stops. But you see, I can also do this alert inside of my console. So if I come here now and I say alert, right, and inside of the alert I'm going to add the string, which is the text. Let's just say the text. I'll say hello, and then I'll close it and hit enter. Watch what happens. Or let me just make it different. I'll say hello again, and I'll hit enter. Watch. So we have the hello again inside of the browser, even though we executed it from this our console, right? So I just wanted to show you that we're going to be working a lot with the console. Okay, so let me go ahead. I'll remove this hello. I'll save this and I'll show you something. Remember, we installed a plugin called Code Runner. Now, many times, if you want to do a console.log, you can actually still run it inside of Visual Studio Code. That plugin you installed called Code Runner will add this play button to the top of your Visual Studio Code panel. So if I click on this page button, watch what happens. Right? So you see here, we now have this hello world in this our mini console. This is our output console, right? So what I can do now is I think I can right click, and I want to make this stick to the right of the code editor. Let me just see. Let me expand the browser. Okay, so I'll just right click on this panel here, this output. I'll just come to the panel and right click and say move panel right. Okay, so basically it will open like a console on the right of our code. So many times if you want to do a quick console.log, well, you don't actually need to go to your browser. You can just simply do it inside of your Visual Studio Code. But many times you'll also find out that I may not do it, for a simple reason that on my own setup here, many times I get errors from this what's it called, this extension. I get an error from the extension even when there's no error in the code. So many times I need to clear the what's it called, the output here and run the code again before I then get what I want, and I don't have that time, right? To be, sometimes I have to even start looking at my code to figure out, oh, is there something wrong? And then when I clear this, it's works fine. So many times I'm not going to use this. I'll just stick with the console.log I have here. Okay, all right. So I think that's it for running JavaScript in the browser. So in the next one, we're going to now start looking at the basics of JavaScript, starting with variable definitions. All right, now we're going to talk about variables, and this is like you need to actually understand this lecture, okay? And I'll do my best to make sure that you understand it. So what are variables, right? Variables are simply containers for storing data. Okay, if you want to store some data in JavaScript, you can do that using variables. So what I'm going to do is to set a foundation for this lecture. I'm going to open Facebook on my browser. So if you have a Facebook account or a Twitter account or any social media account really, and you've registered, you enter your email and your password, you can successfully log in. The reason why you can log in is because either your username and your password has been stored as a variable in Facebook's database. Okay, so basically that data is stored in a variable, and if you enter the correct data and it matches what is stored in their database, right, you are able to log in. So that's as easy as I can explain what a variable is. Now let me come here to my browser, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this my output here, and I'm going to create another file. So let me just create another file, and I'll call it lecture. No, lecture should be small letter, so I'll call it lecture.js. Okay, and the reason why I'm creating this file is because basically I'll be working on my app.js, but if I want to delete something from the app.js, I'll just store it in this lecture.js, just so that you can have it as a reference material. Okay, so great. So now let me close this editor here. Now, so we're talking about variables, right? So there are three ways we can define a variable. So let me add a comment, and if you want to add a comment, all you just need to do is use 2 forward slashes, right? So but I can do that with a shortcut in Visual Studio Code, and that shortcut is, so the 3 ways we can define variable, right, are, the first is var, right, the second is let, and the third is const. Okay, and we're going to see how they are different. Okay, so first off, let's start with var. So I'm just going to define a variable first, then I'll explain. I'll say var, and I'll give that variable a name. So I'll say var name, and I'll set it to be equal to my name. So I'll say Zeno, and then I'll close it. Okay, now this is a variable called name. However, there are some things you need to know about this syntax we just wrote here. If I say var name and then I stop there, that is known as variable declaration. So here, if I say var name and I stop, this is variable declaration. It means I've declared the variable called name. However, when I come down and say var name equals Zeno, I have assigned a value to that variable. Now, this value I've assigned is some text, right? In JavaScript, when you have text like this, it's known as a string. Okay, so there are different words that you're going to get used to as you start writing JavaScript. So this first part of the variable on the left of the equal sign means that I'm declaring the variable using the var keyword, right? And on the right of the variable means that I'm assigning a value to the variable. Okay, now I can do a console.log. So permit me to get rid of this console.log. Now I can do a console.log. I have a shortcut I created on my Visual Studio Code that helps me do stuff faster. Now I want to console.log this name. So I'll just say name, and let me just get rid of this one, or let me comment it out. So I'll say name, which is representing this guy here. So I'm getting this error here, this notification here. I'm going to change this to username. That is because name is one of the reserved words in JavaScript, right? So I'll change that to username, and you see we don't have any issues here. Now if I go ahead and save this, watch what happens. Now we now have Zeno logged into the console. Yeah, which is amazing, right? So if this actually works, one of the questions beginners have is that if var works, why are we having let and const? So prior to 2015, the only way we could define variables was using the var keyword. But the var keyword has its flaws. It has its issues. So let's say I'm building a very robust application, an application that has maybe 1000 lines of JavaScript, and I'm defining my variable with var. Let's see the flaws in var. So here I'm just going to do a couple of console.log. So let me just do console.log, and here I'll just log. Let me just duplicate this a few times, maybe 3 times is okay. And here I'll do 1 and 2 and 3. Now I'm assuming that this console.log are various lines of JavaScript I've written in an actual application, right? I don't want to talk about anything that we have not taught you yet. I'm assuming that these 3 lines of code are some code I've written in my real world application. If somewhere along the line I forgot that I've assigned this username variable to Zeno, and then I come here at the bottom of this page here and I change it for any reason, maybe I say let me just grab this line here and I paste it in. In fact, what I'm going to even do is I'll grab everything, all the full line of code, and I'll paste it in, and I change this to, let me just say Donald, right, which is my other name, and then I save. Right, you will notice that at this line 5 we have console.log username and it's saying Zeno. Watch what happens. I'm going to copy this and I'll paste it just below the username that I set to Donald, and I save. Watch what happens. Now at this point here we have Zeno. After this change we now have Donald here. Now how is this a problem? It is a problem because if at some other point after this line 10 you are using this username variable, right, and expecting that the value is Zeno, you're going to run into errors because you forgot that, oh, you've changed the value of the username to Donald. So that's the problem we have with var. Like you can change this what's it called, the value of the username as many times as you want, and that can cause a lot of problems for you. Let me just demonstrate. So by the way, when you change the value of a variable, right, an already existing variable, it's known as reassigning that value. So here watch what happens. I can change this to maybe something like John, and I save. Watch what happens. It has changed to John. So the fact that you can change the value of a variable, you can redeclare the variable anytime you like, is a problem, because if you mistakenly change the value of a variable that you are not supposed to change, it will change and it will crash your application, and it may take you a long time to find out what the problem is. In 2015, this problem was solved when let and const were introduced to define variables. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to comment out everything I have here. Right, if you comment it out, it will not be run on the browser. And I'm going to come down here, or maybe I should actually just put it up here, and I'll define a variable. I'll call that variable let, and I'll say username, and I'll set that variable to be equal to same Zeno. Right, now let's do a console.log of Zeno. So I'll say log, and I'll say username, or let me just change it to user because this username is quite long. So I'll say user, and here I'll just log in user. Right, I'll save. Exactly the same thing will happen. I have Zeno here, but you see the things I did with var keyword, I'll try and do the same thing with the let keyword. So I'll grab this guy. Maybe I'll do a few console.log first. So I'm assuming that I've added more code to my live application, and then I'll come here and I'll redeclare the user and change the name to Donald. Okay, then let's do a console.log. I'll do Control C and I'll paste that and I'll save. Wow, so we are having an error here. It is telling us here in our console that there is a syntax error, right? And it says that user has already been declared. Okay, so we cannot redeclare a variable that we've already declared. This will help you make sure that you don't make mistakes when you are writing a very robust application, and it's very important when you are writing JavaScript. Okay, so now you cannot redeclare a variable that you've already declared using the let keyword, but you can reassign the value. If you want to reassign the value, however, you need to get rid of the let keyword. So because the let keyword is what you use to declare that variable, right? So if I get rid of this let keyword, that is the only way I can change the value of this variable called user. But remember, if I'm changing the value of the variable called user and I'm not putting the let keyword in front of it, is because I've first of all gotten an error that I've already declared that variable, and now I'm aware of what that variable is, and I know that, oh, I need to change this variable at this point. I'll say user equal Donald, and if I save, watch what happens. So you see now I'm able to change it to Donald. Good. Now in your application there are going to be some what's it called, there are going to be some variables that you don't want to change no matter what. These variables, they are constants. Okay, so let me comment this out like this, and here I'll come here and I'll define another variable. I'll use the const keyword because I want to define a constant variable, something that I know that in my application this is not supposed to change at any point. I'll still define that variable with the word I'll give the variable a name of user, and I will set it to Zeno as I did before. Of course, I'll do a console.log of user. Okay, and let me save. What do you expect? We're still going to have user because const is just another way to define a variable. Now let me come and add some console.log, which is going to represent maybe code I've written in my application. So let's just assume that I've written maybe like 300 lines of code, and I come here. Let me grab this too. I'll paste that in, and I change this my user to Donald, and I save. Watch what happens. So I'm getting an error that user has already been declared. So that error is very similar to what we got when we use the let example, the let keyword. What do we do in the let keyword? We simply remove the let. So now let's go ahead and remove the const. So I'll save that and watch what happens. I'm still getting an error. It's telling me that I'm trying to let me just read what is there. It says assignment to a constant variable, and it's a type error. In other words, it's telling me that I'm trying to assign a new value to a variable that is supposed to be constant. In other words, it's not supposed to change, and that's an error. Do you understand? So when you are building application, right, in this time, in this day and time, you don't even bother using var keyword, right? Just have the knowledge as per, okay, this was what we did before. If you are building an application, stick to const and let. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, in the next slide, I'm going to now outline the main differences between const and let, even though there's something we've seen here. Okay, so here is just a simple way to differentiate the three keywords we can use to declare a variable. So var can be redeclared, it can be reassigned. Const cannot be redeclared, cannot be reassigned. In other words, it's a constant variable, it's not supposed to change. Let, however, although it cannot be redeclared, it can be reassigned. When we use the term reassigned, it means that we can change the value of that variable. So let me just quickly drag this out, right? So this is user Zeno. This Zeno is the value, right? It is what we assign to this variable called user, because this equals is actually what is known as an assignment operator in JavaScript. Okay, so those are the two main differences between this let and const keyword. Now your take home from this lecture is that as much as possible, don't use var, because it's problematic. It may not cause problem for you in a small application, but it will cause problems for you in a very robust application, right? Stick with const, and when you need to reassign a value to a variable, you stick to let. Okay, so those are the three things you should take away from this lecture. All right, I'll see you in the next one. So let's talk very briefly about some rules for naming your variables. Okay, so first off, all JavaScript variables must have a unique name. Okay, you cannot use the same name for two variables and expect that you'll be able to access them differently. No, they must be unique. Then variables can contain names, they can contain letters, digits, underscore, and even the dollar sign. All variable names must begin with a letter. So you should not, and you cannot start a variable with a number. Okay, it must begin with a letter. They can begin with a dollar sign and an underscore, but this is highly not recommended. Okay, but just so you know, it's possible. Names are case sensitive. Okay, so a small letter or a capital letter makes a whole lot of difference in naming variables. Okay, then you should not use reserved words in JavaScript to name your variables. Okay, so you don't run into some kind of error. Okay, so let me actually show you some reserved words. So let me come here. I'll just say JavaScript reserved word, and I think I should have that here. And the first result is usually W3 schools on my machine. So if you come to that page, you see JavaScript reserved words, and then you will see some of them. So you see const, yeah, class, and all of that. So you scroll down, you see the different reserved words in JavaScript. Basically, these words you should not use as variables, okay, or functions. Okay, yeah, so I think that's about it for variables. I'll see you in the next topic. All right, so now having talked about variables and having seen the different ways we can declare variables, and one of the important and the first things we said about variables is that they are containers that store some kind of data. So now we're going to take a closer look at what kind of data can be stored in a variable. That brings us to the topic data types in JavaScript. So what I'm going to do is I'll actually just comment this out, and I would grab everything on this page, Control X to cut it out, and I'll just paste it here in my lectures file. Okay, just so that you can have these things like a reference. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a variable. So I would use the const keyword, and I'll name that variable user. Okay, and I would set it to my name, Zeno. Okay, now this variable, or before I even talk about actually naming this variable, let me just talk about the types of variables, right? So there are two kinds of variables, two kinds of data types, sorry about that, right? There is the primitive data type and there is the non-primitive data type. So the non-primitive data type is also known as the reference data type. So let me just correct this. Okay, so primitive and non-primitive data type. Now under the primitive data type, we have like 6 different examples, or 6 different subtypes of data. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy those 6 types, right, and I'll paste them in here. Okay, so let's take a quick look at them. So I'm trying to say that under the primitive data type, we have strings, we have numbers, we have boolean, null, undefined, and symbol, right? Now for the non-primitive, or what is known as the reference data type, right, they are non-primitive data types, or also known as objects. Okay, so an object is actually what is known as a reference data type. Okay, but in this non-primitive or reference data type, we can also have an array. Okay, so arrays and objects, right? And it's important for me to state that an array is not a data type, right? It's just a type of object. Okay, all right. So so what we're going to do is we're going to start from the primitive data type, and we're going to see how examples of, so what I'm going to do is, let me come here and let me create a variable. So I'll say const user, and I'll set that variable to Zeno. Okay, now how do I check the data type of this variable called user? So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do a console.log, and here I would say type of. So we use the type of operator. If I say type of and I say user, right, and I save, watch what happens here. So you see here in the console I get this string. Okay, so because this user is actually a string. Now let me quickly state that when you are creating a string, it needs to be inside of quotes. Okay, now these quotes can either be single or double quotes, depends on what you prefer, right? But I prefer double quotes, but it can be single quotes, and if I save that, I'll still get the same result here, string. Oh, I've even set my code editor to convert single quotes to double quotes. Oh, that's interesting. So I prefer double quotes, but single quote works. There's a reason why I prefer double quotes. I'll not want to go into that now because of time. Okay, so so yeah, so this is the first data type. Okay, so let me just add a comment here and say string. Okay, so I'll say string. All right, so next we're going to look at number, right? The number data type. So I'll add a comment. I'll say number, and here I'm going to create a variable. I'll say const, and I'll name that variable age, and I'll set it to 21. Okay, right. Now the difference between declaring between assigning a number to a variable as compared to a string is that you don't need to wrap a number around quotes. Okay, so if I come here now and I say, and I do a type of age and save, you see here now that we have number. But if for any reason we wrap this 21 inside of quotes and save, watch what happens. So it changes to a string. All right, so I just wanted to point out that to you. So that's the second kind of variable. The next is the boolean, and basically a boolean variable can have only two values, either true or false. Okay, so if I wanted to check if someone is an adult, right, and let's say if I wanted to check if this guy here is an adult, basically if I want to check if it's above 18, so I can create the value inside the variable and say is adult, and if the guy is more than 18, I'll set it to true. Okay, so if I come here and do type of is adult and I save that, watch what happens here. So you see here we have boolean. So the type of this variable, the data type here is boolean. Okay, the next one we have is null. So let me just come down here and I'll add a comment and say null. Okay, so here I will just create a variable. I'll say const, and for some reason I'll just say user, and I'll set it to be equal to null, and I'll save that. Oh, before I save, I need to actually come here and change this to user, and then I'll save. I think I did something wrong. Oh, user has already been declared. Oh, I need to change that. So I'll say new user. So let me say new user, and that should actually be new and user. Okay, then I would come here and console.log new user, and if I save that, you see now that there's a problem here. We are getting the type of as object. So this is one of the anomalies that JavaScript has, right? Null is supposed to be a data type, but when you do a type of null, you get this object. Okay, so just I don't want to go into it now, but it's one of the issues that JavaScript has. Okay, all right, so let's see the other ones. We have undefined and symbol. So for undefined, right, I'm going to create a variable const, and I'll just say username, for example, or let me just say user1, and I'm just going to declare that variable. I'm not going to assign it to a value. I'm not going to assign a value to it. Now if I come here and do a type of user1 and save, because I have not assigned a value to it, right, with missing initializer in const declaration. Oh, let me change this to, I need to change this to let. Okay, so that's just one of those things. So I'll change it to let, and I'll save, and watch what happens. So here we do a type of user1 and we get undefined. That's because we've declared the variable, but we've not assigned it a value. Okay, if I decide to assign this a value, then the type of operator will change to the data type of that value. Okay, so that's for undefined. Then I think the last one is symbol, and this one came with ES6. Okay, ES6, right, that was introduced in 2015, right, that brought some new features to JavaScript, including let and const and other things. Okay, so for symbol, I'm going to, let me add a comment here and say symbol. I don't know why I keep doing this. Symbol, and let me do a let here, and I'll just say sim, and I will set it to be equal to symbol. So the S has to be capitalized. Okay, so I'll say symbol, and like so I'll put my parenthesis in front of it. And now if I come here and do a type of sim and save that, watch what happens here, right? So we have symbol, data type of symbol. So well, the what we need to talk about now is the reference data type, or the non-primitive data type, and they are also objects. Okay, and like I said, an array is not considered a data type because it's just a kind of object. Okay, so when we talk about reference or non-primitive data type, we are simply just talking about objects. So be it arrays, objects, functions, and all of that, they are simply just, you know, different ways. They are simply classified as objects, really. Okay, so basically we've not talked about arrays, we've not talked about objects, but I just want to do just a very quick one on that. So let me just add a comment here and say array, and here I'll just define a variable r, and I'll set it to, the way we create arrays is we use square brackets, and here I'm just going to add two names. So I'll say Zeno and I'll say John. Okay, and if I come here and say type of arr, and don't worry if you're not familiar with what an array is, right, don't worry, you see here for the arr we have these objects. Okay, so what I'll do last is I'll just create a quick object. So let me say object, and I'll say const, let me just say obj, and I'll set it to be equal to, and I'm just going to use object literal. So here I'll just say name, I'll give it some properties. Well, I shouldn't use name, I'll say user, and I'll set that to a string. So I'll say Zeno, I'll do a comma, and I'll say age, and I'll set that to, I'm just going to say maybe 21, or no, maybe 30, and then I would save that, and I'll come here and do a type of obj, and let's save and see what happens. So we're still going to get object, right? So that's what I said when I said the non-primitive or reference data types are just basically objects, right? If you come inside of the examples and you check an array, you check an object, you're still going to get a data type of object. All right, so that's it for data types, right? In the next one, we're going to now delve into what an array is. All right, see you there. All right, welcome back, guys. Now before we actually go and talk about arrays, I just want to do a little discussion on type conversion. So we've seen data types, right? What I want to show you now is that one data type, for example string, can be converted to another. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just cut out everything I have here and just paste it in my lectures folder. Okay, so I'll just come down and add a comment here and say, I think data types, and then I'll just paste everything at the bottom. Okay, so here we'll then do something on type conversion. So what I'll do is I'll just create a variable. I'll call that variable, I'll say let x. Okay, and I'll set that variable to a number. So I'll say let x is equals to 5. Okay, so maybe what I'll then do is I'll do a console.log at the bottom, and here I'll just say x. Okay, actually it should be type of x. So type of x, and of course if you save, I'm sure you already know what we're going to get here. So we're going to get a number here, right? So what if we wanted to convert this data x, this variable x, from a number to a string? Well, what you can do is at the just at the to the left of the number, you can add the string keyword with a capital letter, and then you're supposed to open parenthesis. This 5 will then go into the parenthesis like this. Okay, now if we go ahead and save, this will change from number to string. Okay, so basically data types can be converted in JavaScript, right? Let's see another example. So let me duplicate this downwards and comment it, the first one, out. So here I'll say let x, and I want to convert a string to a number. Okay, so what I can do is I would say like so. I'll do my quotes and I'll put 5 inside. If I save that, you will see that here we get string on the console. That's because we wrapped this number around we wrapped it around quotes. Okay, if I duplicate this guy downwards and say, okay, what I can do is I can actually just get rid of this let. So if I come here and I now say number, so it should start with a capital letter. So I'll say number, and I'll open my parenthesis, and then this oh, I need to actually, and then this string in here, I'll just put it, so 5. If I save that, watch what happens here. So we get a type of number. So effectively we've converted this string to a data type of number, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it for, let's see the Boolean example. So let me copy this, or let me just duplicate it downwards and comment out the first one. So yeah, so here I'm going to say x is equal to true. Remember, booleans can either be true or false. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this boolean true to a number. So here I would say number, and I'll say x. Okay, so I'm converting the boolean to a number. If I do type of x and save, well, I can actually just put the true inside of here. So I can just come here and say true, so it's a little bit simpler. If I do type of x, watch what happens. See, it's number. Ideally it should be boolean, okay, but because we've wrapped it around this number here, we can now see that it has been converted to a number. Okay, so but if we're actually doing it like straight up like this, then it should actually have its own let at the beginning here. So here I'll just add the let, and you know what, if we actually do, I'm going to do another console.log, and here I'm going to console.log x, right? And I'm going to use a number method on this variable x just to show you the actual value of the x that we've converted from a boolean. So I think this was true, that we've converted from a boolean to a number. So I'll say x dot, and I'm going to use a number method. And even though you don't know this number method, I just want you to actually see the point. Okay, we're going to talk about number methods much later. So I'll say x dot to fix, and then I'll open a parenthesis, and I'll just leave it blank like this, right? And I'll go ahead and save, and let's see what we get as true, as the value for true. So you see it becomes 1 here, right? If we maybe add like a number here, so let me say 2, and save, it will be 1.00. so these two actually just represent the number of digits after a decimal. Okay, right? So I'll just get rid of it and I'll change this to false, and let me go ahead and save, and you see that it's equal to 0. Okay, so I just wanted to show you the value of a boolean when you convert it to a number. Okay, there is quite a number of things we can do with this stuff here, so maybe let me just show you some of them. Right, I'll just comment this out, and here let me just say let x be equal to, and I'm going to add a number, so I'll say 5, and I'm going to add it with a string. Okay, maybe I'll add a string with a number first, so I'll say 5, and then I'll say plus 2, or let me just say 5 plus 5, and let me just go ahead and I'll get rid of this one, and then I'll save. And what do you think will be the result? Okay, so it's going to convert this to a string. Okay, so you see here that we now have the value as a string. Right, now what I can do is, let me do a console.log here, and I'm going to get the value of this what's it called, of this variable x. So I'll just console.log x here, and then I'll save, and here you can see that we have 55, but it's a string. Okay, so maybe what I can do is I'll just cut this guy here and I'll just put it down so that we can see the value, then we can see the data type at the bottom. Okay, so now let's do another one. I'm going to bring this down and comment this out excuse me, and here I will say let me do 5, and I'll change this to, and maybe I'll just change this to minus, and then I'll say 5 minus 4. So what do you think is going to happen? So let's go ahead and save so that we can find out. So you see 5 minus 4, the answer here is 1. That's because this 5 is converted to a number. Okay, so that's how JavaScript understands what we need to do, right, to get what it wants. So I'm going to comment out this one. I'm just showing you automatic type conversion. Okay, so let me do multiplication sign. I'll say times, and you use asterisks for that. So I'll say 5 times 2, right? This is a string, this is a number. What do you think will be the answer? Let's save and see. So we get 10, and that's because 5 is also converted to a number in this case. So there's this automatic type conversion that happens in JavaScript, right? And it's just important that you just have the basics of it under your belt. Okay, you can do more research on it. Okay, but for now I'm going to stop here, right? And in the next one we're going to start looking into arrays. All right, so now we're going to talk about arrays. Okay, so like I did before, I'm going to cut out all of this and put it in this lectures file, and I think I talked about data type conversion. So honestly, I don't know why I'm typing like this, but okay, and then I'm just going to paste that in. All right, so talking about arrays, right? In the previous lecture, one of the previous lecture, we saw what a variable is, and we said that a variable is just a component that stores data, right? So an example of a variable is, sorry, I don't use the var keyword, so I'll say const, and I'm just going to say user, and I'll set that user to Zeno. So this is a variable that is storing my name, Zeno. All right, so but what if we wanted to store the name of 3 users, right? In that case, we may need to actually say user, maybe user 1, user 2, and user 3, right? Okay, so if you're storing 3 users, I mean, it's fine, but if you needed to store, let's say 1000 users, you're not going to create 1000 variables, user 1 to 1000. No. So what you're going to do is, when we want to store more than one data values, we put them into what is described as an array. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this, right? So I'll just stick with user here, and at the bottom here I'm going to create another variable, or an array really. I'll say users plural, and I'm going to set it to be equal to, we're going to use square brackets, right? Inside of this square brackets, because the user is going to be a data type of string, is a string. So here I'm going to say Zeno. I'll add a comma, I'll put another quotes, and here I'll say Donald. Okay, I would add a comma after the, and the last one I'm going to call let's just say John. So John, and then I'll save. All right, so what we have here now is an array of users, right? I'll come here and I'll do a console.log. So here I'll just say users, plural, and then I'll save. Now watch what happens. So in our console.log, we now have this information here. So if I click on this guy here, you see now that we now have Zeno, Donald, and John, which is what we actually set inside our arrays. Okay, now let's look at a few things we can some information we can get right from the array. Now, although we already know that there are 3 items in the array, it's important for me to just do this one. So I'm going to come here and show you how you can get the length of items in your array. So we're going to do that using a method called array.length. Okay, and if I go ahead and save that, right, watch what happens. So we get the first console.log, and the second one here has told us that we have 3 items inside of our array. All right, so if you look very carefully, you notice that this first console.log actually logs everything, all the values we have inside our array. Now, what if we wanted to log just the first value, this guy here called Zeno? Well, I'm going to come down here, I'll do another console.log, and of course I'll get rid of the users. I think I should maybe comment out this one so that we have just one stuff in our array. Okay, so now to log this first user, we need to get the index. Okay, so there is a property of an array called array index, and the way you access the index and log it to the console is you open a square bracket and then you specify the index number. Now it's important for you to pay attention here, because array indexes start from 0. Okay, although we have 3 items here, you don't start counting this as item 1 because it's considered an index. So array indexes start from 0. So here I would say user, and inside these square brackets I'll say 0, and I'll go ahead and save and watch what happens. So here you see here that we're now accessing the first item here as Zeno. Okay, if we go ahead and do 2 more and access another one, so 0, 1, 2, and save, watch what happens. So we're accessing Zeno, we're accessing Donald, and we're accessing John. Okay, so those are the things, that the basics you need to have under your belt when working with arrays, right? Subsequently, we're going to see amazing things we can do to an array. Okay, but I don't want to rush you. We're going to do it sequentially and step by step. All right, so now that we've learned what an array is, right, the next important thing we need to know is about array methods. Okay, array methods are just we can call them functions, right, that can manipulate an array. Okay, so we have this array of users here right now. Okay, and before I even talk about this topic, right, I should probably say that I have a playlist here on YouTube that expand on array methods. Okay, short videos that will just touch on very important array methods like for each, array.map, array.splice, and all of that. Okay, so but then I just wanted to show you, just to introduce you to it in this tutorial. Okay, so we now have an array of users we created in the last lecture. Right now we have 3 items here. Okay, what if I wanted to add like another user here? I wanted to add a 4th user. What do I do? So I can say users, and I'll say dot push. Okay, oh sorry, that should be users dot push. Okay, and because it's a method, and a method is just simply a function inside of an object, right, it's going to have this parenthesis here, and here what do I want to push? So I want to push Sarah. Okay, so I'll just say Sarah and I'll close that. If I now do a console.log of users, what do you think I'll get? So let's try that and see. So users, now we now have, let me expand this, we now have Zeno, Donald, John, and Sarah. Okay, so that's the array.push method. Let me do one more. So here I would say, let's say if I want to delete the last items here, so maybe I should comment out this Sarah here. If I want to delete the last item, which is John, I can say users.pop, and that's it. If I do that and I save and we console.log users, you see here now we now have just two items, Zeno and Donald. It has successfully removed the last item here. So like the important ones are, very important ones are array.forEach, array.map, array. And those ones are the ones I'm talking about that I have a playlist dedicated to array methods. So I'll leave a link in the description. Make sure you actually check it out, right? And bring yourself up to speed with these various array methods, because you're going to use them a lot in the projects we build in our 100 Days of JavaScript course. All right, let's continue. Okay, now so we've been able to actually look into what an array is, and we've seen what it can do and how it makes our lives easier. So what I'm going to do is, let me just get rid of this guy array, and I'll just say array here, and then I'll paste that in. Okay, so let's come back here. Now what we're going to discuss is, we're going to see some methods, okay, of the data types we've discussed so far. So we've looked at strings, we've looked at number, and we've looked at an array. Okay, we briefly looked at objects, but we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to apply methods to objects now. We're going to do that in a separate lecture. Okay, so we're going to start from string methods. Now before we even talk about string method, what is a method? Okay, so basically a method is a function that you can actually apply to inside of an object. Okay, now we are talking about a function. A function is just something that executes a task. Okay, I'm just trying to describe this in plain English first before we then actually see what it does. Okay, so basically what this means is that for primitive data types like string, we say string is a primitive data type, right? Those primitive data type, they cannot actually have methods of their own, but we're still going to apply methods to them. So what this means is that whenever you are applying a method, right, which is just simply put a function that does something on your string, when you are applying a method to a string, to a primitive data type like a string, JavaScript actually treats that string or that primitive value like an object. Anyway, let's not go too much theoretical about it. Let's just actually see what it does, right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to define a string, and I'm just going to say let's user. I've been using user since, I think I should just go with x. So I'll say x is equal to Zeno. Now we're going to start by seeing the length property. So this is a property, this is not a method. So if I say x, sorry, I'll do a console.log, and if I say x dot length, and I save, watch what happens in our console. So you see here that we have 4. That's because if you count the number of characters or letters inside of this string, you see there's actually 4. Okay, so that's the first one I just wanted to quickly introduce to you. Okay, so but what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to say Zeno is a developer, right? And let's do something else. So I'm going to duplicate this, and let me just get rid of this. And what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to show you how to find a string inside of this string that contains 4 words. Okay, so here we're going to use an index of method. Okay, there's a method we call index of. So if I go ahead here and say index of, so the O will be capitalized. Okay, now let me quickly say this, that I didn't talk about how to name variables. Okay, I think I'll go back and do a lecture on how to the rules you have to follow when you're naming variables. I'll go back and do that. Okay, but this is called camel casing, right? When you have 2 words, right, and the second word, the first letter of the second word, when it's capitalized, it's called camel casing. It's a very popular occurrence in JavaScript. So if I do index of and I say I want to do index of Zeno. I want to find where Zeno is in this string. So I'll paste it index of Zeno, and because it's a string, it needs to be inside quotes, right? Okay, but where do I want to apply this index of? Where exactly do I want to apply it? So I want to apply it in the variable x. So here in the front of this index of, I'll say x dot index of and Zeno. I hope it's clear. So let me go ahead and save that and let's see what happens. So you see here that, okay, first of all, the console.log of x.length has changed to 19 because we increased the number of words in the string, and x.index of Zeno is telling us that 0 is giving us this 0 in the console.log. That's because Zeno is the very first word you have here. Okay, and remember, JavaScript indexes are 0 base. That means they start from 0. So if I change this Zeno and I say maybe I want to search for is, so if I say is and I save, watch what happens. So we now have 5. Why is it 5? Well, from the Z we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The space is actually considered a character, so 4, and then the is starts from 5. That's the I. Okay, so I think that's about it for index of. Okay, now there can be a situation where you have two words, right? So what I can do is I can say Zeno is a developer, and I know it doesn't really make sense, but I'll just put my name at the end again. So Zeno is a developer, Zeno. Okay, if I do the next method I want to show you is what is known as last index of. What this last index of will do is that it will return the index of the last occurrence of the particular string you're searching for. So if I come here and instead of saying index of, if I say last here, and because of the rule of camel casing, I'm going to change this I to a capital letter. Okay, and then I'll just change this back to Zeno. Okay, if I go ahead and save, watch what happens. So it will tell me now, of course, that I now have 24 characters, but that the last index of Zeno is at position 20. Okay, so if you actually check that out, you see that this is position 20. Okay, so that's another string method that you can apply on your string. Now there's one more thing I want to talk about, the index of method, before I actually go to another one, is that you can actually give this guy another parameter. You can specify where you want the search to begin. So if I do a comma here, right, and I maybe specify that, okay, fine, this string has 24 characters. If I say I want to start this search from maybe like position 19, right, and I save, watch what happens. So I don't think this is actually a good example. So maybe what I'm going to do is let me do it with just index of. So I'll just do index of just to make it clearer. Okay, and inside of this index of, let me get rid of this last Zeno here, right? And I'll say I want to search for developer. Okay, and now if you count here, you see that maybe we have like 19 characters, right? If I say I want to search for this developer word, but I want to start from, let's just say this is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Okay, let's just say I want to start from position 9 on the string. Okay, and I go ahead and save, right? Watch what happens. Good. So you see here that it's telling us that at position 10, that's where we actually have the word developer. Okay, another thing is if I maybe come and say maybe position 15, which is maybe somewhere inside of this word developer. So I'll come here, I'll say 15, and I'll go ahead and save. Okay, great. So now you see here that we're now having this -1 in our console.log. Now what this means is that if you run is if you do if you use the index of method on a string and the word you are searching for cannot be found, it will give you a result of -1. So this -1 simply means that that word cannot be found. It's the same thing if we come here and we just search for something that doesn't even exist in our string. If we go ahead and save, you still get -1. Okay, so that's just basically how that works. Okay. All right, so now we're going to look at the substring method. Okay, so for that, I'm going to change this to just some names. So I'll just say Zeno, I'll add a comma, I'll just make it okay, I'll say Donald. Let me just say Donald. I'll just use small letters for all, and then I'll say John. Okay, and I think I just want to make it 4-letter words each. Okay, so fine. So Z. Okay, so what I gotta do is I'm gonna create a new variable. I'll say let, and here I'll just say val. Okay, and it's inside of this val variable that I'll be applying my string methods. Okay, so that it's easy for me to just log the val variable. Okay, so now I said I want to talk about the substring methods. Okay, so inside of this val variable, I'm going to apply the substring method to this x variable that contains these 3 names. Okay, so here I'll say x dots, and then I'll say substring. So it's just like a single word, substring. Now this substring method will take 2 parameters. Okay, those 2 parameters are actually going to be numbers. Okay, and the first is actually where you want to start to I've not actually said what the substring does, right? What the substring method does is that it will slice out, or it will remove the specified parameter or the specified word from this variable, and it's going to take 2 parameters. It's going to take a start parameter and an end parameter. Okay, so the start parameter simply means where do you want to start, right? So remember that our when we want to do indexes of either an array or whatever it is, it's 0 based. So this first word Z is actually position 0. So this is position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so here I'm going to say that I want to start at position 5, and so I said this is 5, right? So 6, sorry, that should be, I'm counting, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I want to stop at position 9, right? But here I'm going to say position 10. Okay, because it's not going to include the it's going to exclude the 10, right? So it will actually stop at 9. So basically what I can do is I don't even need this what's it called, x.length anymore, right? What I want to do is I just want to do a console.log of the value, right? This val variable I created. Okay, that will make it a lot easier. So if I do a console.log of val and I save, watch what happens. Okay, so if you look very well in our console now, you see that we now have this donor inside of our console, right? So that's how the substring method actually works. It can look inside a string and extract whatever it is you want out of it. Okay, and in our 100 days of JavaScript course, we actually build projects that we use the substring method not more than once. Okay, but let's look at a method that is very similar to substring. Okay, it's the substr method. So what I gotta do is let me just duplicate this downwards, and let me give some space, and I'll comment out this first one here, right? So it doesn't interfere with our program. We still have the 3 names here, and we still have our value, but I'm going to change this substring to substr. Okay, so I'll just say str, right? And like the substring method is going to take 2 parameters. The first is the start, but this second one is not where you want it to end. It's how many characters you want it to extract. Okay, so if it starts at position 5, which is where this D is, I want to extract 4 characters, so that's DONA, right? So I'm going to come here and I'm going to say 4, right? And let me go ahead and save, and let's see what happens. Oh, I actually need to say 5, right? Because it's going to extract the 4 characters and it will not include the 5th one, which is the comma. So I'll go ahead and save that, and now you see we have donor. Okay, so that's the what's it called, sub str method. There are other differences between these two methods, okay, but I don't really want to go into them right now because, okay, one of it is that this substring method can take a negative value, okay, this one does not. Okay, so but let's not go into that right now. Okay, so let's look at another string method, which is string.replace. Okay, so what I gotta do is I'm going to say I'm going to change the content of this my x variable, and I'll just say I love JavaScript. So I love JavaScript. Okay, and here this val I'm going to say x.replace. So I'll change this to replace, and what it actually does is actually self-explanatory. It actually replaces one string with another, or a component on your string with another word. So if I say, for example, I want to replace uh, JavaScript, for example, so let's say I want to replace JavaScript, so that's going to be the first parameter it takes, right? And because it's a string, it needs to be inside quotes. And then the second parameter it takes is, what do you want to replace JavaScript with? Okay, so I love JavaScript. Let me just say I love PHP. Okay, I don't like PHP. Oh, well, I've used PHP a little bit and I'm not really a fan of it. I'll go ahead and save that. And if you look in the console, you now see that here, instead of I love JavaScript, it's saying I love PHP. That's because we've replaced the JavaScript with PHP. Okay, and I'm going to comment this out because what I really love is JavaScript. Okay, of course I'll get an error here and all of that. So yeah, so that's the string.replace method, right? So but then there is one or two things I should have actually done before. Okay, so maybe what I can do here is I'll just change this to, I'll just say JavaScript, right? JavaScript, just plain old JavaScript with small letter. Let's see. Okay, so now this val variable, I'll say x dot, and I'll just say, let me just get rid of all this stuff here, and I'll just say x dot to uppercase, and I need to, yeah. And now if you go ahead and save and watch what happens here. Oh, there needs to be that there. Okay, because it's a method, right? It should have parentheses. So now that I said x dot to uppercase, you see here that we now have a console.log of JavaScript, but it's all in uppercase, right? You can do x dot to, so I'll say to lower case, and if you save that, well, it's still going to be in lowercase. The only way you're going to appreciate that is if you have a, maybe the first word is capitalized, and maybe we do JavaScript, and then if you save that, you'll still see that here we have everything in lowercase. That's because these two capital letters have been converted to small letters. There's one other thing, right? If I give some space here, right, at the beginning and at the end, if I do x dot trim, so I'll say trim, what this will do, that it will remove the spaces at the beginning and the end. If I go ahead and save this, you see that we still have, the normal JavaScript here, but we don't have any space around it. Okay, so that's what the trim method does. Okay, then there's one other one I want to show you, and that is concat, right? String concatenation. So basically what I'm going to do is I'll say x, and I'll create another variable. I'll call this variable let's just say y. Okay, and this is not going to be JavaScript, this is JavaScript is awesome. Okay, now if I want to combine these two strings together, right, what I can do is I'll put them in this value, right, and I'll say x, and then I'll use plus, and I'll say y. If I go ahead and save, let's see what we have here, right? So you see it says JavaScript, and then the is actually, you know, attached to the JavaScript word. So what I can do is I can give a space here, add some string with just an empty space, and then add a plus. Okay, so basically what's going on here is that I'm concatenating an empty space before I then add the second y. So if I go ahead and save, now you see that we have everything spaced out nicely. Okay, Now, so this is how you do some concatenation, but then there is another way there's a method you can actually use for this, right? So let me just show you that. So instead of doing it like this, let me show you a method you can use. So I can say x, right, which is the first word, dot, and then I'll say concat. Okay, this concat is going to take, like, what do you want to concat? It simply means, concatenation in JavaScript simply means that you're combining, you know, two or more strings together, right? So here, first off, I want to add a space, right? I'll give a comma and I'll say I want to add y. Okay, so if I go ahead and save that, we'll still have JavaScript is awesome here. All right, so but before we go to number methods, right, this is like a good point for us to talk about template literals, right? So what I gotta do is I'm going to come here. I'll get rid of this these values here. And template literals basically is a feature that was introduced in ES6. So instead of doing all this cumbersome concatenation, you can actually just use two backticks. Okay, so if I say backtick here and I say x, right? So instead of just saying x, right, I'm going to represent it like an expression, like a variable. So here, and to do that here, you're going to use the dollar sign and the curly braces. So here I'm going to say x, right? I'll give a space, and because I'm using these backticks, right, and this is template literals I'm explaining here, this is actually what the concept of template literals is, and we're going to use it a lot in our 100 Days of JavaScript project. So if you give a space, right, that space is actually factored in, right? And then I would add, let me just add the y. So I'll do my dollar sign, and here I will then add my, oh sorry, this should be dollar, not and, so dollar, not ampersand, and here I will then add my y. Okay, now it looks like this is more cumbersome, but once you get a hang of it, right, it makes your life actually very easy, right? If I wanted to add like some text here, all I just need to do is, maybe if I want to add a comma, and I'll say maybe something like isn't it, something like that. So isn't it, like add a question mark here, I can do that inside of this template literals. Okay, so if I go ahead and save, watch what happens in our console. So it says JavaScript is awesome, isn't it? Whereas if I wanted to do this using the normal concatenation, like, it will really be cumbersome. Okay, so this is template literals that was introduced in ES6, and it really makes our lives easier as JavaScript developers. Okay, so next one, we're going to look at some methods we can use on the number data type. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about numbers. We're going to talk about some methods we can use in numbers, but also, since we're talking about numbers generally, we're going to talk about the math object. Okay, so let me cut this guy, and sorry, what did we talk about here? We talked about string, concatenating, and all of that, right? So let me just cut that, and I'm just going to paste that in here. I'll say string. Okay, so we can have that. So now what we're going to do is, when we have a variable, so let me say const, or sorry, let me say let, and I'm going to set that variable to, I'll give it a name. I'll say x, and I'm going to set it to be equal to just a number, so I'll say 6. Okay, so here I will come down and do a console.log, and here let me just log x. Okay, if I go ahead and save, you see we have 6 here. Great. So a number can either be a single digit or have decimals. Okay, so I can say 6.07, and stuff like that. And if I do a console.log, oh sorry, I need to save that. I'm reassigning it here, so you see we have it here. Okay, so but basically what we're going to do is, you see this x here that we've given, we've added some decimals, like decimal points to it. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to come here and I'll do x dot, and I'll say to fixed. Okay, so we've actually seen this one before. So basically what this will do is that it will define the number of characters you want after the decimal point. So if I want maybe like 2 characters, I'll go ahead and save that, and you see now that we now oh sorry, I need to put all of this Control X, or let me put it in a value, in a variable called value. So here I'll say val, and I'll set it to be equal to x.toFix. So instead I'll just log my value here, and if you save that here, you will now see that we now have 6.08. so they are just 2 characters after the decimal. Okay, so there are a lot of things you can, I've actually said before that you can convert a number to a string, and let me show you that. So if I say dot to, instead of saying to string, I'll say, instead of saying to fixed, I'll say to string, right? And it's just a method, right? If I go ahead and save, you'll still see the number, okay? But if you do a type of val, so if I do type of val and save, you'll see that it's now a data type of string. Okay, so that's another method you can use on the number. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to just create 2 variables. So let me just get rid of some of this stuff here, and okay, maybe I should comment this out so that you can have it. And I'm going to create another variable here, so let me just duplicate this, and I'll make this y. Okay, and let me just make it something simple. So I'll make this 5 and I'll make this 10. Okay, great. So basically what I want to show you is, let's talk about arithmetic operators. Okay, so basically the arithmetic operators are just operators in math, so things like plus, minus, times, and all of that. Okay, so that's what we're going to actually just look at. So basically let's just come here and let's just say arithmetic operators. This should be metric. And okay, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to say val is equal to, and here I'll just do x, and then I'll say plus y. Okay, I'll close that, and if you go ahead and save, right, of course x plus 10 plus 5 is giving us 15. Okay, so basically that's the addition operator. So we can have the addition, we can have the subtraction. Go ahead and save, we'll get 5. We can add the division, and you use a / for the division. If you save that, 10 divided, and you get the answer 2. We can have the multiplication. So for that we use asterisks like this. If you go ahead and save that, you get 50. We can also have what is known as the modulus operator. So it's the percentage sign. Basically what the modulus operator is if you divide 2 numbers and there's a remainder, you get that remainder. So it will give you the value of the remainder after you've performed a division. And if you divide 10 by 5, right, you don't get a remainder, right, because it's a complete whole division. So if I go ahead and save, you expect 0 here. But if I change this 10 to 11 and you divide 11 by 5, well, you can get 2 5s in 11, which will give you 10, and you have a remainder of 1. So if I go ahead and save, you see now that we have 1. Okay, so that's it for the modulus operator. Let me take it back to 10. So basically we've seen the arithmetic operators. Let's talk a little bit about the math object, okay, because JavaScript is so amazing. Okay, so let me just talk about math objects. Okay, great. So there are a lot of things we can talk about, but let me just go very fast. Okay, so basically what I'll do is I'll set the value of I'll set val to so math. I'll start with math.round round, and there's something I need to do first, right? So maybe I would actually just not put a variable. I will not apply a variable here. So if I say math.round, what does math.round do? So here, let me actually just show you practically. So here I'll just say maybe 5.6. So I'll say 5.6, and if I go ahead and save and I do a console.log of val, you see what happens. So what math.round does is that it will take away the decimal, right, and just give you the whole number. Sorry, it will give you the it will round the number up to the nearest decimal point. Okay. So basically, because 6.6 here is more than 5 and it's closer to 6, that's why we have 6. If you change this now to maybe something like 4, you see that it will round it down to 5. So if I go ahead and save, you see here now that we have 5. Okay. But then if you actually want it at all times to be rounded up to, so if I do math dot seal, right, seal like maybe the seal in the top, it will always round it to the upper single integer it can get. If I go ahead and save, you see that we'll get 6. Oh, sorry, did I do something wrong? Math dot seal is not a function. Oh, it's supposed to be CIEL. Sorry, it's supposed to be CEIL. Okay, it's just the spelling, typographical error. So if you go ahead and save that, you will now see it will round it up to 6. Now, what if you want it at all times to be rounded down to the lower integer? So if I come here and I say math.floor, right? If I say math.floor and I save, it will always round it down to 5, even if I say 5.9. Right, that ordinarily math.round will round to 6. If I say 5.9, to still round it down to 5. Okay, so there are other different stuff you can do, right? If you can do math.power to find the so let me just show you math.power, POW, and this one will take two numbers, okay, two parameters, right? The first parameter is the number you want to find the square of. Okay, so if you want to find the square of 5, for example, so I'll say 5 and I'll say 2, and then if you go ahead and save, watch what happens. So you get 25. So 5 times 5 is 25. Do you understand? So there are some other ones, like let me just do math.mean. So if I come here and let me just, what I gotta do is I gotta add some random numbers. So here I'll say 23, I'll say maybe 12, I'll say maybe 55, right, like that. Here I will then say math.mean. Okay, what this will do is that it will look inside all of these numbers and it will look for the smallest one. So if I go ahead and save, you see here now that we have 2, because 2 is the smallest number here. If I duplicate this guy now and say math.max and save it, right, it will look for the highest number, which is the maximum number, and in this case ours is 55, and that's what we have in our console. Right now, especially we're going to talk about math.random. So before I even talk about math.random, I feel like I should just grab all of these guys here, right, and let me just cut it out, Control X, and paste it here, and I'll just add a comment here and say math, because math.random is something that is very common in JavaScript. It's something you need to actually understand. So here I will say let me just say value is equal to, and here I will just say math, sorry, the math needs to be capitalized, so math.random. Okay, and it's a method, so it will have parentheses at the end. If you go ahead and save, right, just watch what happens. So basically what math.random does is that it generates a random number from 0 to 1, but excluding 1. So maybe I should take that again. Math.random will generate a random number from 0 to 1, right? Hold that thought, but it does not actually include that number 1. So it's going to be from 0 to 0.9999 or whatever, you understand? So if I keep refreshing this page now, you see that a random number is generated every single time. You understand? A random number is generated every single time I refresh this page. This is 0.8, right? This is 0.5. Okay, good. Now what you can do is that instead of just generating this random number like the way it is now, I can say maybe I want to add, or maybe I'll just give a space here and say I want to multiply the value of this guy now to, maybe I want 10. So if I want it to be up to 10, I'll say multiply by 10, but because it doesn't actually include that highest number, I'll say I want to do 10 and then I'll say plus 1. Okay, I'll go ahead and save. Now watch what happens. So you see here now we have 1. Let's keep generating. We have 9. We have 2. So every time you refresh this page, it will generate a random number. But you see, as it is now, it has this plenty, decimal, these numbers after the decimals, and that's, you may not want that. So what you can do is that we can then use the math.floor, which actually rounds it down. So I will now surround all of this expression here. I will surround it with math.floor. So let me even come here and start here. I'll say math.floor, right? And it's going to be inside, it's going to have this parenthesis. So everything here, right, from this math.random, I'll cut it out and paste it inside this math.floor. You see how we got here? If I go ahead and save now, watch what happens here. So now we now have a single number, a single integer. So that's 4. Let's refresh it. That's 9. Let's do that again. That's 5. If we keep doing that, we can actually get to 10. Okay, let me just see if I can get to 10 in. Okay, 8, 10. Voila. Okay, so we have 10. So you see now, because we added this +1 here, that's why we now have this 10 here. Okay, so I think that's it for the working with numbers and integers and arithmetic and even the math method. Okay, so we'll stop here for this topic and we're going to go into the next one. All right, so now I want to talk about if-else statements, or what is known as conditionals in JavaScript. But before I do that, I think there's something I probably should do. So let me just get this out. So I'll do Control X and I'll just add it to the bottom of this page here, Control V. Okay, so what I need to do is I'm going to need this first, these guys here. So let me just paste that in here. Okay, so we have 2 variables, x and y, and then we have these arithmetic operators. So basically what I want to show you is, okay, I need to do a console.log. I need to do a console.log here, and I think I need to log in val. Okay, so first off, permit me to just maybe comment out this and just leave the first one. Okay, so now we have this variable that says val is equal to x plus y, and of course I know you know the answer is supposed to be 15, because 10 plus 5 is 15. Yeah, I'm very good at math. Okay, that was a joke. Okay, so but there's a shorthand notation that you can use to get the same result. As a matter of fact, if I go ahead and save this page, you'll see here that we have 15 in our console, right? But I wanted to show you the shorthand notation because it's something that happens very commonly when we write JavaScript. Okay, so basically I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say val is equal to, instead of saying val is equal to, I'll bring this plus in front of oh, I think I actually just mixed this thing up. Okay, the way I was supposed to actually explain this is I need to make this x. Okay, so x. So I'm assuming that I am reassigning this x. So this x that was initially equal to 10, I'm reassigning the value to be x plus y. Okay, so if I go ahead and save, of course we'll still get let me see. Oh, I'm console.login val. I need to console.log x, sorry. Okay, so if I go ahead and save that, right, we're still going to get 15. Okay, so I wanted to show you a shorthand, right, of how you can write this stuff. So instead of saying x is equal to x plus y, right, I'm going to come to the next line and I'll say x, and then I'll bring this plus in front of the equals. So I'll say x plus equals y. Okay, now if I go ahead and save, watch what happens. So oh, we're getting 20 because we've already incremented x. So permit me to comment this out and save, and now you see x plus equals y is giving us 15. Okay, so basically if you ever need to like do this kind of calculation where you need to say, okay, x, you want to update x and you're saying x is equal to x plus y, then you can use this shorthand notation, and it actually works for the rest of them also. So if I go ahead, let me just make all of this x, and let's just see a few examples. So I'm going to make this x, and if I want to do for the minus, and I'll just come here, I'll copy this, and I'll need to comment this out and paste this in. So I'll say x is equal to x minus y. Of course, you know that the answer will be 5. So 5 minus 10 minus 5 is 5. But we can use the shorthand notation and say x minus equals y, and save, and we're still going to get the same answer. Okay, so it works for the division sign, the multiplication sign, the modular sign, and you can even use it for various stuff in your calculation. Okay, so that's just basically what I wanted to show you, and let's go to the next one. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at a very important concept in JavaScript, and it's called conditionals. Okay, so let me just get rid of everything we have here, Control X, and I'll just put them at the bottom here. Let me add a comment and say arithmetic come on, arithmetic operator, and maybe I'll say shorthand, and then I'll just paste that in. And okay, so great. So here we want to talk about conditionals, right? So let me add a comment, conditionals. And basically a conditionals is a concept in JavaScript that helps you check if a condition is true, right, and does something if that condition is true. A common use case would be to check for a person's age, right, before you give them access to something on your website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define two variables. The first one I'm going to call let me say const, and I'll say user. Control Z. I'll say user, and I'll give it a name of Zeno, and then I'll create another one. This one is going to be age, so I'll say age, and I'll just give it maybe 20. Okay, I'll give it my current age, 27, and I'll go ahead and save that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do an if statement. Okay, so we want to check if this user has an age that is greater than 18. Okay, and if the person has an age that's greater than 18, we want to do something. So you start by saying if, and then you open the parenthesis. Okay, you come out, you open your curly braces, and you open it up like that. Inside of this parenthesis is where you then specify the condition you want to check for. So now I want to check if the user's age, right, is greater than 18. Okay, so this age variable, I'm checking if it's greater than 18. Now if it's greater than 18, what do I want to do? Well, I would love to do a console.log, but I think it's more dramatic if I do an alert. So let me do an alert, and let me say you are an adult. Okay, so I'll go ahead and save that, and watch what happens when the page loads. So when the page loads, I get this notification that you are an adult. Okay, I'll click OK. Great. But what if the person is less than 18? In other words, the person is not up to 18 years. There is now the second part of this statement, which is called the else block. And when I say else block, any expression or any concept in JavaScript where you have to write some code in between these curly braces is known as a block. Okay, it's like a block of code, right? So in this else statement, I would copy the alert and I'll paste it in, and I'll say you are not an adult. Okay, if I go ahead and save, it will still say I am an adult. Why? Because the age is greater than 18. 27 is greater than 18. So let me close that, and let me make this age 15. And if I save this right now, watch what happens. The notification has changed, so it now says you are not an adult. So what happens is that it starts from this guy here. It checks, okay, greater than 18, that's the condition. and it looks at this age variable. It has actually already looked at the age variable and says that, okay, 15 is less than 18. So it now comes to the else block and runs the else block. Okay, so that's how if else statement actually works, and it's a very common thing in JavaScript, right? So what I'm going to do is, before I even go, okay, I think I can actually go deep, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you about the an operator. They call it the ternary operator. Okay, it's it does the same thing like an if else statement, right? But we kind of use it a lot in React. Okay, so that's why it's important for you to know it. When I write plain vanilla JavaScript, I rarely use ternary operator. Okay, most times I even have to Google it before I remember this syntax. Okay, but I'm going to show you now. So this is if else statement. This next one is going to be ternary operator. Okay, great. So the way a ternary operator is different from an if else statement is that in this if else statement, you see we started with an if, and then we put the condition we want to check if it's true or false, right, inside of this guy. Now in a ternary operator, the condition is what you actually put first. So I'll copy that, right, and I'll say age is greater than 18. So this is what I want to check. This is the condition, right? If age is greater than 18, in other words, if this statement is true, what do I want to do? The first, that's this first if block, right? Now to apply this in, what's it called, in ternary operator, you need a question mark. So basically I'll write a question mark, I'll copy that, and I'll paste this in. And because I don't want it to be too long, I'm just gonna alert just the word adult. Okay, so what if this condition is not met? If the person is 15 or less than 18, as we set here, then we need to have an else block. Now in ternary operator, you then use a colon. Okay, and then here I'll just copy this guy and alert it, and here I'll say child. Okay, so I want you to examine it very well. This is the condition. This is the condition. If the condition is true, this is what happens. If this condition is true, the question mark is followed by what happens. The else statement here is what is represented here as this colon, and this is what happens if the condition is false, and this is what happens if the condition is false. Okay, so the ternary operator is a lot shorter if you look at the overall number of text, I think. But like I said, in pure vanilla JavaScript projects, I prefer to use this, except when I need to use this. But in React, React is a JavaScript library. Some people refer to it as a framework. In React, we use ternary operators a lot. Okay, that's why you need to actually know it. So if I go ahead and comment out this if statement and I save this file, what do you think will happen, right? What do you think will be alerted? So I'll save it. And you see now we have child, and the reason why we have child is because the age is 15, which is less than 18. So it's evaluating the else block, which is this child. Okay, so we've looked at if else statements, we've looked at ternary operators, and we've seen the difference in both syntax, okay, of the both of them. So now we're going to look at the logical operators. But before we even look into the logical operators, I think we should just do the comparison operators first. Okay, so what I got to do is, let me just copy this guy. I want you to have that, right? I'll come down here, I'll add a comment and say comparison operators. Okay, so basically it's just what it says. You are trying to compare stuff, right? So now here we're checking that if the age is greater than 18. So I'm going to get rid of this, right? Now the comparison operators, let me just actually list them out. When you have an equal to, this is known as equals, or no, this is known as an assignment operator. Okay, right? Let me do another comment. When you have double equals, it's known as, basically what it does is that it checks if the value you are applying this on is equal in value and type. Don't worry, we're going to see that. When I say type, I mean data type, right? Then you can also have, sorry, if it's equal in value only. Okay, right? So now when you have 3 equals, it's checking if it's equal to, if it's the same in value and type. Okay, so what we are going to do is we're going to test this out and see what we get. Okay, so there should be an error here. Great. So permit me to actually bring down this my variables, Control X. Let me just keep it somewhere close where I can see it. Yeah, so I'll just keep it here, Control V, and let me give it space. Great. Now basically what I want to do now is I want to check for this age. So I'll say if age, right, is equal to, and here I will say 15, right? So I say if age is equal to 15. Basically what I'm checking for here is I'm just checking the value 15. Of course, if I go ahead and save, you will see the notification. I'm throwing up an error here. Okay, because of this guy here, and I haven't even talked about hoisting yet. Anyway, no problem. Let me just save that. Okay, so now I'm saving this, and you see here that you are an adult, right? But guess what? I'm going to change this to a string. So I'll wrap my quotes around that number 15. And what do you think will be the answer now? If I save, watch what happens. It still says I am an adult. That's because this double equal sign is only checking for the value. It's not checking for the type. This is a string, and here we are checking for a number. But guess what? If we make these 3 equals, which means that we want to check for not just the value, but the value and the type. Okay, the data type. That's what type means here, right? If we do that and we save, what do you think will happen? So I need to actually okay this first, then I'll save. What do you think will happen? So it says you are not an adult, even though there is 15 here and 15 here. The reason why it's saying you are not an adult is because this 3 equal sign is checking for both the value and the type. So the value is 15, but the type here is a string, and the type we're checking for is a number. However, if we come and wrap this number with quotes, guess what? Suddenly this person becomes an adult. So if we go ahead and save, watch what happens. So it says now it says you're an adult. Okay, so I just want you to know the difference between using this one. This one simply means that it's an assignment operator. This is checking for just the value, and this is checking for both the value and the type. Okay, so anytime you want to check for like something, always make sure you use 2, and when you are in doubt, use 3. Okay, that's just the take home from this comparison operator. Okay, all right, so now what we are going to do is we are going to see the logical operators, right? So I'm going to come here and I'll add a comment, and I'll say logical operators. I don't know why I keep doing this stuff, man. Logical operators. Great. So permit me to actually let me copy. Okay, I'll just cut it out and I'll paste it here because I want to see the data I'm working with. And then I'll also copy this and comment it out, and I'll come down here and paste it in. So now these logical operators, they are very commonly used when we write JavaScript applications. We have 2 variables here. The first is user, the second is age, right? Great. User is equals to Zeno. Zeno is a string, and age is equals to 15. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change this age to, let's just say 18. Okay, so I think there's something I missed out in the, okay, I can cover it here. I'll cover it here. So the first operator I want to talk about is the AND operator. What is the AND operator? Well, let me add a comment and I'll say AND operator, and the AND operator is represented by 2 ampersand sign. Okay, then I think I should actually just do the 3. So this is the AND operator, this is the OR operator. I think I should make it capital letter, so OR, this is and the last one is NOT. Okay, the OR operator is represented by 2 pi's sign, and the NOT operator is represented by an exclamation mark, a single exclamation mark. So let's start from the AND operator and their logical operators. They help us add more logic to our if-else statement and to our code. So here, what if I wanted to check that both the user is Zeno and the age is at least 18? How do I do that in one if-else statement? So I'm going to come here, I'll get rid of this stuff here. I'll say if user is equal to, so I'm using double equals, and I want to check if the user is equal to Zeno, right? Then I also want to check to make sure that the age of the user is at least 18. So let me do the and sign, so that's and, okay, and then I'll say age is, okay, let me see, I can actually say age is greater than or equal to, and then I'll say 18. I hope you understand. In other words, if these two conditions are met, then this alert will, you're an adult alert will run. So let's try it out and see. I'll save, and you see that you are an adult. Now what if I change the age of this guy to maybe 12 and save? Let me click this first. What do you think is going to happen? So I'll save and watch what happens. So it says you are not an adult. That's because one of these conditions is not true. That brings us to the second operator, OR operator. The OR operator is just going to check if at least one of the conditions is true. And if at least one of the conditions is true, it will execute the code in the if block. Else, it will go to the else block. Now, I'll change this and here to a double pi symbol, and then I'll save. Oh, I need to close this first. Come on. I'll go ahead and save this again and watch what happens. Even though I set the age to be 12, which is less than 18, because the user is equal to Zeno, and that's correct, this first one is correct, it still tells me that I'm an adult. Do you understand? This is how the OR operator works, right? Now the last one is the NOT operator. So let's see. So I'm going to get rid of all of this. I want you to have this stuff, man. Okay, let me just comment it out. So I'll copy it and comment it out, right? And I'll just paste that in. So the NOT operator is this guy we see here, right? So let me comment, delete all of this. Now if I want to make sure that this user, oh, how am I going to explain this, right? Okay, fine. If I say if age is greater than or equal to 18, right? I'm going to allow this. So let me make this age 18. I'll save. Watch what happens. It says I'm an adult. Why? Because the age is actually 18, and we are checking if it's greater than equal to 18. What if we want to check if age is not equal to 18? In other words, it will come to this else block. So let me change this age to maybe 12. So I'll check. To do that, I'll say if age is not, and in the front of this age I'll add the not operator. So it will reverse everything. So it's checking now if the age is not equal to 18. And if the age is not equal to 18, it's going to alert you are an adult, which doesn't make sense anyway, but let's just run it first and see. So now the age is 12. Actually, I think the age, I should just leave it as 18. If I leave the age as 18, right, and it checks this age, if it sees that the age is not equal to 18, Anyway, let's just save and see what happens. The thing is even confusing me that I'm talking. Okay, so here it's supposed to check whether the age is not greater than, you know what, I think I should just make it easy for myself and you, the students. So I'll say if the age is equal to 18. I'm not going to check for greater than or equal to 18. So if the age is not equal to 18, then it will alert you are an adult, or this first one at least. So I'm going to come here, I'll change the age to 13, and let me okay this, and I'll save. Okay, so you see, because this first block, this condition is not true. Why? Because the age is 13. It's telling me that you are not an adult. See it here, you are not an adult. Good, let me close that. Now I'll come here and make this age 18, and what do you think will happen? So let's save. You see, so I'm saying that if the age is not equal to 18, and sorry, I think I'm mixing this thing up. Let me just, if the age is not equal to 18, then alert you are an adult. Okay, yes, that's correct. That's correct. Okay, so if I check if the age is equal to 18, let me close this and save. You see, now it's telling me that you are an adult, right? If I come here and put the not operator, what that would do is that it will make this that is initially true, it will automatically make it false because of this not operator, and then it will come to the else block. I was looking at it so strangely. Okay, so let me go ahead and save this, and now it has moved to the else block. You are not an adult. Okay, so it's something that you should actually sit down and digest and make sure that okay, you understand it before you start building application, because if else statement is so common that oh, you need it almost in every application you build to check if something is true, if something is false, or if more than one variables are, you know, as you want them to be before you execute a function. So I think I'm going to stop here for this lecture, and we're going to continue in the next one. All right, now we're going to talk about loops. Okay, so I would move this one to my lecture.js file so that we can have it, and we're going to talk about loops. Okay, now in JavaScript there are like I think like maybe 5 types of loops, but the very common one, like the most popularly used one, is the for loop. Okay, so but then there is also the while loop. Let me just see. So for and while loop. All right, so in this tutorial we're going to talk about these 2 kinds of loop, but let me quickly say that we have more kinds of loops. There's the for off loop, there's the for in loop, right? There's the do while loop, you know, but me myself, I don't think I've used some of those kinds of loop. Most times I use the for loop, right? Very few times do I actually use any other kind of loop, right? But we're going to talk about these 2. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an array, right? Because basically what a loop does is that it helps us to access the values inside an array, or maybe an object or something like that. So I'm going to create a variable. I'll call it numbers, plural. Not a variable, an array, and I'm just going to do 1 to 9. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and 9. Great. I'll close that, and let's create a loop. So basically in the previous lecture we saw that to access the values inside of this array, if I do a console.log and I say numbers and I get the 0 index, you know, the index in an array, they are 0 base, so this 1 is actually index 0. If I save that, what do you think I'll get in my console? 1. Great. So but what if I wanted to access all of the values inside of this array? Does that mean I'll now, you know, do something like this and say index 1, index 2, index 3 and all of that? Oh, that doesn't make any sense. Although if I do it, it will work, right? So in that case, we'll need to loop through this array and get the values inside of them. So that brings us to the for loop. When you want to create a for loop, you use the for keyword and you open a parenthesis and a code block. Inside this parenthesis, there are three statements you're going to write. So let me just say 1. I'll give a space. I'll say 2 semicolon 3. So there are 3 statements you're going to write inside. This first statement is actually to initialize the loop. In other words, to define the starting point of the loop. And to initialize the loop, we define it with I. So we say let I be equal to, and we want this loop to start from 0. Okay, this I can be whatever you want to, but conventionally we use I in JavaScript, but it can be whatever you want. It can be A, it can be Z. Now this next statement is the condition you want to be watching out for while this loop runs, okay, or while this loop iterates through this guy here, this array here. So what do we want to watch out for? We want to make this loop run as long as I is, let's say I is less than or equal to numbers dot length. Okay, what does this mean? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a console.log of numbers.length. Okay, but for me to do that, I first have to comment out this loop because I've not finished writing it, so that I don't get an error. So you see that if you do numbers.length, you get 9. That's because we have 9 numbers inside here. Great. So we're going to run this loop as long as I is less than or equal to numbers.length or equal to 9. The last statement here is the statement we write to continue running the loop. So I'll say I plus plus. In other words, as long as this condition is true, repeat the loop. Okay, now inside of this guy here is where I will then set the condition I want to, what's it called, the condition I want to, not the condition, rather the code I want to run. Inside of this block is where I will set the code I want to run as long as this loop continues. So but what I'm going to do is, first off, I'll comment out, or just okay, maybe I should just comment it out so you have it. I'll comment out this console.log here, and inside this block I'm going to do a console.log of I. Okay, what do you think is going to happen? So let me save that so that we can see. Now inside of our console.log, you see now we now have 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 up to 9, and it stops. Okay, so basically we've been able to loop through this numbers array and we have output it in our console.log. Now there are 2 things about this for loop that I want to show you. We're going to talk about the break statement next. Okay, so let me, where can I add a comment? So let me say break. I'll just say break. Okay, now we use the break statements when we want to stop a loop. Let's say we don't want this loop to get to the end, we want it to stop at 5. What do we do? Well, we're going to come back and use our if else statement that we learned in the previous lecture. So I'll say if, and I'll open it up. What is the condition we want to watch out for? I'll say if I is equal to 5. What do I want to do? If I is equal to 5, Control X. Okay, so as long as I is equal to 5, it will run this console.log. Okay, then I'll then come down here. Oh, I should actually leave this where it was, so it will run. So I'll say if I is equal to 5, I'm going to break the loop. So here we then say break. Okay, and we close that up. Okay, so that's the break keyword there. So what do you think is going to happen? So if I go ahead and save this, watch what happens. So 1 2 3 4, sorry, 0 1 2 3 4, and then it breaks at position 5. Okay, so that's how you apply the break keyword. Now there's another keyword. It's actually called a statement, right? The break statement. There's another statement we can use in the loop, right? It's called continue. and we're going to see what it does. So let me save that. Okay, great. If I is equal to 5, continue. Now if you come here, let's actually see what happens here. So maybe I should drag this up a little bit so we can see. So it starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. When it gets to position 5, it omits position 5. It jumps to 6. Basically, that's what the continue keyword does. At that condition you set, it will omit that condition, and it will continue running the loop. It's just that it will omit that point where you set. So that's why you see here that 5 was omitted. Okay, great. So now I think that's about it for how a loop generally works, except that we're doing it in console.log. In our JavaScript course, we work a lot, we build a lot of projects with loops. Okay, so if you haven't actually bought the course, please use the link in the description to buy that course so that I can even get some out of it. All right, thank you so much, and let's see how the while loop actually works. Okay, so I was actually trying to say that the difference between the for and the while loop, right, is that okay, I wanted to demonstrate it, right? So let me comment out this, and initially this was if I is equal to 5. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this if I is equal to 0. Okay, and then I'll break out of the loop. For that, I need to actually comment out the while part of the code and save, and watch what happens. We don't have anything in our console.log, not a thing. Now if I copy this if I is equal to 0 break, I'll just copy it, and I need to uncomment out this guy, and let me get rid of this one for now. And if I come here now and paste that in, right, and I save, what do you think will happen? Do you think it will be the same result as this? So let me save and see. So you see here we have at least one result here, and that is because a while loop will always run once, okay, before it gets an opportunity to break. It will always run at least once, unlike a for loop where if you set the value like this, it will not run at all. So that's like the main difference between a for and a while loop. So but like I said earlier, for me, most times I use the for loop. There are very rare cases where I need to use maybe the for or the for in loop or the other kinds of loop. But of course, it's something you can actually go and Google and do your research on and just see how the syntax differ, okay, and the situations where you can use them. All right, so thank you so much for watching this one. We'll see you in the next one. Okay, so in this one we are going to talk about functions. Okay, very important concept in JavaScript. What is a function? A function is simply a block of code that carries out a particular task. Okay, I don't want to use the word function again, okay, so that it's not okay, but basically a function can carry out a particular task in your code. Okay, so let me quickly show you how to create a function. So there are different approaches to creating functions, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what is known as function declaration, and with that you create a function using the function keyword. Okay, so function, and then the next thing you do is you give the function a name. Okay, so for example, if I want to maybe say hello, okay, I just want to greet my maybe user or something like that, so I'm going to call this function say hello. Okay, after you've named that function, mind you, there can also be functions that are unnamed, okay, anonymous function as they are called. Okay, but this is what we are focusing on for now. So after you've given the function a name, that is followed by a parenthesis, and then you open your block. Okay, inside of this block is where you write the code that runs when this function is called, okay, or when this function runs. So now inside of this function I'm going to return something. So here I will say return, and I'm just going to say inside of strings I'll just say hello, or I'll just say hello world. Okay, great. Now I'll go ahead and save, And now if I call this function, maybe I'll just do a console.log, and here I would call the function say hello. Or maybe before I even do this console.log, let me actually show you how a function is called. So you've created a function. If you save, nothing actually happens, right? Because you actually need to call this function before it runs. That is also known as invoking the function. Okay, but I just prefer to call it calling the function, but you'll find the word invoking commonly used. So to call this function, you need to call the function by calling the name of the function and putting the parentheses in front of it and close like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is instead of actually just returning something here, I'll just do a console.log. So let me do a console.log here, sorry, log, and here I'll just grab this text, this string, and I'll paste it inside here. Okay, so you get, so now that I call this function, if I go ahead and save, watch what happens in the console. So in the console we now have hello world, right? Okay, let's take this a step further. We're going to create a function that will do some kind of calculation. Okay, we're going to start very simple, addition. So I'm going to create a function that I'll call add, right? And then let me open it with this block here. Now inside of this function I want to return something, so I'll say return, and let me just say 2 plus 2. Now of course I know that 2 plus 2 is 4, but this is just an example, right? Now the only problem is that if I write this code like this, right, it will always return 2 plus 2. It cannot return any other thing. So this brings us to something we call parameters. Inside of this parenthesis after the function name, we can add any number of parameters we want. So for this particular function, I'm going to add 2 parameters. I will name the first one A, and I'll name the second one B. Okay, so instead of saying 2 plus 2 here, I'm going to say A plus B. Okay, I hope you can imagine what's going on here. You can imagine the logic. So now if I want to call this function, right, I will need to call the function add and open parenthesis. Now because we've added this parameter, right, we can then add some values inside of this parenthesis, and inside of this parenthesis, if you add any value, it's called an argument. Okay, so it is this argument that will be represented inside of this parenthesis here in the function. So for starters, I'm going to do 2, and I'll add a comma, and I'll say 2. What this means is that it will evaluate, and based on what is inside of this function, because we are calling this add function, it will run. So basically I expect that this 2 is represented by this A, and the second 2 is represented by B. Okay, so how do we actually see the output of this guy here? So I can just do a what I can do is I can put this function into a variable. So I would say const, and let me just say add num, and I'll set it to be equal to, and I'll call this function. What this means therefore is that I can do a console.log of add num. Okay, now if I go ahead and save, watch what happens. So we have our first console.log that says hello world, but now we also have the result of this add num that is calling this function, and it's adding 2 plus 2, and we have 4 here. Of course, if you change this to, let's say, 2 plus 8 and save, you get the result 10. If you come inside this function and you change this return A plus B to A minus B, and of course let me just make this 5, and I'll make this maybe like 2, and let me save, and 5 minus 2, as you can see, we have the answer 3. So basically that's how a function works. Of course, function add, so I'm going to change this back to plus, because your function name, as much as possible, your function name, your variable names should describe what they're actually doing. Okay, so if I'm creating a function that adds two values, I should actually give that function a name that has something to do with add. Okay, because if your application gets very robust, you don't want to start wondering what a function is doing. You want the name to be as descriptive as possible. Okay, great. So now there's a task we're going to build now. We're going to build a temperature converter, right? So what I can do is I'm just going to search for the formula to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. Okay, so I'm on Google right now, and as you can see, we have this temperature converter on the screen. So but what I'm interested in is the formula, and of course this temperature converter works. Okay, so if I do maybe like 34, you see that we get a value here. Okay, so let me just delete that and put 0. So what I need is this formula here. Okay, so I'm going to copy this formula, and let me come back here, and permit me to just paste the formula here, so it's a comment. Now let's create a function that would convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. That's like a temperature converter. So let's go. So we start function, and the name of that function I'll give convert temperature. So I'll just say convert temp, just to make it a little bit shorter, and I'll open it up. Okay, now I want to return something. By the way, I haven't mentioned that when JavaScript runs, right, when it analyzes your JavaScript file, when your browser analyzes your JavaScript file, inside of a function, anywhere it sees the return keyword, it stops that function. So if I had, let's say, like different lines of code, and before I got to this return, anywhere I get to this return, that's where the function actually stops. Okay, so all right, so basically it's not in every function that you need this return keyword. Okay, and you're going to see that when you start building projects in 100 Days of JavaScript, although we're going to build some few projects here too. Okay, so inside of this, right, I'm going to return I've pasted the formula in here. Right now, we don't actually need this result. This is the result, right? So this is not part of the formula, right? So let me get rid of the result. This bit here is the formula. Okay, great. So now let's look at it closely. It says 0 degrees Celsius times 9.5 plus 32. What this means is that you are supposed to actually have the Celsius you want to convert. Let's say you want to convert 10 Celsius to Fahrenheit. So here we are going to say Celsius. So I'll just say cell. This cell is representing the value I want to convert. But if I'm putting cell here, that means I have to pass it as a parameter here, right? And we're going to see how all of this fits in. We're getting this error here under this X because multiplication sign in JavaScript is actually this asterisk, not X. Okay, so basically Celsius times and then this plus 32. Great. So how do we see if this formula actually works, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable. I'll call that variable temp, and I'll set it to be equal to, I will then call this function, right? Maybe I should actually just delete this and call the function first. So I'm going to call this function, I'll say convert temp, right? And this function, because here it's taking the parameter of Celsius, which I shorten to cell, here it's going to take an argument. That argument is the actual value in Celsius that you want to convert. So let's just say I want to convert 5 Celsius to Fahrenheit, right? If you save this, right, you will not get any result here. Let me comment out the hello and these guys. So these previous ones, I'll just comment them out, and I would not call the function. I'll save. Okay, so we won't have anything in the console. Great. So I'm calling the function, but it's not doing anything. Now for me to display this in the console.log, I'll put this function inside a variable. Okay, so it's just like saying const, and I say temp is equal to, and then I then say, let me cut that function and put it in front here. So this function will be executed and stored inside of this temperature variable. Okay, so what this means is that I can then come and do a console.log of temp. Okay, if I go ahead and save, let's see the result we get. So it's telling us that 5 Celsius is equal to 41 Fahrenheit. Well, there's only one way for us to check. So let's go back to our Google app, which we assume works fine, and we're going to do 5. And as you can see, 5 Celsius is 41 Fahrenheit. So kudos to you if you were able to do this challenge. It was a very brief one, but I hope it's imprinted into you how function actually works. Now let me quickly talk about a concept that was introduced in year 6, that's in 2015. Arrow functions. I'm sure you must have heard of arrow functions if you've dabbled with JavaScript before stumbling on this course, right? So arrow functions is a different syntax. It's another way we can create functions. It does the same thing mostly, but it has a shorter syntax, if you may. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain arrow functions with the first example I gave, which is, or maybe I'll use this one here, right? I'll use this add. So I want to start very simple with arrow functions. So what I'm going to do is how do I do this? I'm going to cut this guy, okay, and I'm going to come down here and I'll add a comment and say arrow functions, and then I'll paste it in. Okay, so we have a simple function here that adds two numbers together, right? Let's see how can we convert this to an arrow function. So permit me to, I think I'll just delete this for now. So this is just the function. So to convert this to an arrow function, the first thing you need to do, right? Let me copy this, paste it in again. The first thing you need to do is this function keyword, you need to actually remove it, right? And we're going to make this add, we're going to create it as if we're creating a variable. So I'll say const add, right? And I'll say that it is equal to, do you understand what's going on here? So we remove this function keyword and we replace it with const. Then between this function name and this parenthesis, we added an an assignment operator, okay, because equals is not the same thing as an assignment operator. Many times I just mix them up, but I really understand them, so you should know. So we add an assignment operator, and in front of this parenthesis, right, you then add an arrow sign. How do you write an arrow sign? An equals and a greater than sign. This is how you convert a regular function to an arrow function. So this is a regular function, this is an arrow function. Now if this is your first time of actually working with an arrow function, it may actually take you a while to digest, but once you understand it fully, you're really going to appreciate using arrow functions, right? Now inside this function, we are doing just one thing. We are just returning, we have just one line of code, right? Maybe what I'm going to do is, let me actually call this function. So I'll comment out this one. Let's just confirm that this function actually works. Let me not assume. So I'm going to call the add function, and I'm going to give it 2 parameters. So let's just do 5 and 5. Okay, now let's put it inside a variable. So I'll say const and add number, and I'll set it to be equal to this function, right? What this means is that I can do a console.log of add number. So let me log it to the console and say add num. Of course, if we need to come back to our page, right? Of course, if we go ahead and I think we have a console.log. So let me comment out this one first. If we go ahead and save, you will see here that we now have 10, and this 10 is coming from this arrow function. Remember, we've commented out the regular function, right? Great. So you see that the arrow function actually works. Now let's expand a little bit more into this arrow function. Do you know that when you have just a single expression inside your arrow function, you can actually even make it a lot shorter? So what I'm going to do now is, let me first copy this guy, and I'll just come down here and paste it in. and you see how we can make this a lot shorter. Because we just have one expression inside this function, I can even get rid of these curly braces. Mind you, if we had more than one expression, then we definitely need our curly braces. But because we have just one expression, I can get rid of these curly braces like this, and I can come here, and you see that this our return keyword is actually, there's an underline under it. That is because in an arrow function, the return keyword is explicitly implied. What that means is that the arrow function already knows that it needs to return something. So no need to put this return keyword again. It's like, you know, tautology in English language. So I will delete that, and you can see that we now have a much shorter function here. Now I'll comment out this first one, and this is the same arrow function being called. In fact, let me just change it here. Let me change this to 5 plus maybe 9, and then I'll save and watch what happens. 5 plus 9 is 14. So can you imagine how we started? We started like this, right? And we said that there's a better syntax, and even in the better syntax, we still found a way to make it a lot shorter. So that's the concept of arrow function. Like it's a syntactic sugar when it comes to writing functions. Okay, now I'm going to say it from the start that it may take you a while to actually get used to arrow function. There's no rush, right? Take your time, digest it, make sure you absorb it properly. In the JavaScript 100 Days of JavaScript course, we work with arrow functions a lot. So if you're moving to 100 Days of JavaScript after this crash course, then you're not even going to have much issues with, you know, for arrow functions and the different ways to create functions. Now there are some areas in functions that we may not actually cover, but you pick up along the line as you build projects. There are things we call ifs. Okay, they are functions that call themselves. They are self-called functions, immediately called functions. In other words, you don't need to invoke them, right? As we advance in building project with JavaScript, you see a lot about functions and how to use them. But for now, let's go to the next step in the course. Okay, welcome back, guys, to the course. Now, in this one, we're going to talk about DOM. Okay, DOM actually stands for Document Object Model. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let me drag a picture, or before then, let me come here, right, inside of my app.js, and I'm going to do a console.log, and I'm going to say document. Okay, I'll go ahead and save that and watch what happens. So by doing just the console of log for the keyword document, we have this result here in our console. If I go ahead and open that up, you see that it actually shows me, let me just drag this up and expand this. So it actually shows me everything I have in my document, right? By that, let me go to my index.html and show you so we can compare. So you see it starts from this doc type here, all right, and then HTML. So everything I have in my HTML page, right, it shows me here just by doing a simple console.log of the word document. If I open this body tag, you see the hello world and JavaScript is awesome, which we have here. Okay, so basically what this means is that let me just bring in an image that will better describe the document object models, okay, so that we don't have to spend so much time explaining. So on top of everything is the window object, and we're going to talk about that later, hopefully. But now what we're talking about is the document, right? The document is simply the page you are on. Okay, that's the document, the page that is open in the browser. The window object is the browser itself, that window that is open. Okay, now from that document, every element in the page can be accessed. Okay, and that is the whole concept of the document object model, because with the document object model, JavaScript has the power it needs to create to make your page dynamic, okay, to add dynamicity and functionality to your page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy some text, and that is going to be the guide for which we build on this document object model topic. Okay, So I think I can put that inside my lecture.js. Okay, so here I'll just paste in some text, and okay, let me comment it out. So basically, with the power of document object model, this is what JavaScript can do, and even more. JavaScript can change the HTML elements in a page. JavaScript can change the HTML attributes in a page. JavaScript can change the CSS styles, right, on an element or in a page, right? JavaScript can remove existing HTML. In other words, it's deleting. JavaScript can add new HTML to a page. It can react to existing elements on the page, and in that area we're going to talk about JavaScript events. Okay, we'll come to that much later. JavaScript can create new HTML elements and events inside of a page. So basically we're going to use this checklist to practice with working with the DOM and even events. Okay, so let's come here. When talking about the DOM, the first thing you need to do is you need to know how to select elements on a page, right? So let me come to my page here, and I think I need to bring this down. Great. So this is my page. It's a mini. Let me expand it a little bit. Just a minute. Yeah, so this is fine. So this is our index HTML. It doesn't have much on it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some content to it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a div with a class of content. Okay, it's going to be an empty div, right? Then I'm going to add an input. So let me add an input, and that input is going to be a type of text, and I'm going to give it an ID of what am I going to say here? Should I just say input? Okay, let me just say input. Okay, so next I'm going to create a button, and this button is going to have a class of btn, and then I'll just say submit. Okay, and then I'll save. Okay, all right, so maybe what I'm going to do is I think I can just leave the page like this. Yeah, for this h1 I'll just leave it as h1. Okay, let me give it an ID or a class of heading. Okay, all right, so that's great. Now let's save, and that's all we need to do to learn in this section. So what I'm going to do is okay, I think I'm going to bring this content here, Control X. I'll put it below the button, Control V, and then I'll save. Okay, yeah, so I think it's fine like this. Okay, great. Now let's come back to our app.js and let's start. So when you're working with the documents object model, the first thing you want to do is you want to be able to select an element on the page, and there are different ways we can excuse me, there are different ways we can select elements on the page, right? So I'm going to go to my index.html, and let's start from, I think we can start from this button here, right? If you want to select this element on the page, right, you can do so using the ID, right? You can do so using the class. This one has a class of heading, right? So maybe I'll give it an ID of head. I'll just say head, right? It doesn't make any sense, but I'll just give it an ID of head. Okay, so now how do we select these elements from our JavaScript file? Well, let's see how we can actually select it by ID first. So I'll say documents. Oh, it needs to be in a variable, so I'll first put it in a variable, or maybe I should actually just say const, and I'll just say h1 as the heading, and then I'll say so I'll say documents. So remember, we're talking about document object model, and then we want to get, so I'll say document dot, I want to get an element, so get element. How do we want to get an element? Well, the first way we want to get that element is by its ID. Okay, and if you watch out for what is happening, you'll see that I'm using what is known as camel casing here. So the G is small letter, that's the first word, but subsequent words are capitalized. The first letter are capitalized. Okay, now we want to get an element by its ID. And what is the ID we are interested in here? Well, it's going to be inside a string, And if you come here, you see that we have an ID of head. So I can copy that and I will then put in that head here and then I'll close. So basically what we've done here is that we've been able to select this H1. We've been able to select this H1 from our JavaScript. Okay, now we can represent this H1 in this variable. Now there are different ways we can also select elements from JavaScript, right? Like there are quite a number of ways. I think maybe like up to 6 or 7 or even more. I'll just show you the common ones. So this is the first one, get element by ID. Now we have this class of heading. So that brings us to the second one. So basically what I got to do is I got to come here. I'll create another variable. So I'll say const, and you know I cannot repeat h1 because I've already used that. So I'll just say h2. Okay, let's just say h2 even though we know it's a h1 element. And this time I'm going to select this element using what is known as a query selector. So I'll say document dot and then I'll say query selector. Okay, now what does this query selector do? Well, it can select any element on the page, right? The difference between selecting an element by the ID and using the query selector is that the query selector can select anything on the page. It can select the element itself, it can select the class, it can select the ID, you know, it can select anything on the page. Okay, but maybe if I even talk about the but, maybe I should just actually select this. So because I want to select a class, I want to select it by this class here, right? I would come here and say dot heading. Okay, that's how you select a class using query selector. Okay, all right, now we've been able to select this class. Now let me show you something else about the query selector method. Supposing you had like a number of paragraphs, right? Let me just say JavaScript is awesome 1, JavaScript is awesome 2, right? So this is like 3 paragraphs on this page. We have 3. If I come here and I say I want to create a variable called p and I want it to select the paragraph, okay, all I just need to do is to say p and save. Okay, and if I come here, you will see that we have 3 paragraphs. So the question is, which of these paragraphs are being selected? Simple answer, just the first one. When you use a query selector, it will only pick out the first element on the page and select it. What if we wanted to select, and before we even talk about, you know, selecting more than one element, let's even see how we can be sure that, you know, all of these elements we're selecting are actually properly selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a console.log, or maybe before I do a console.log, let me actually show you what I want to log. So I'll do a console.log, and inside this console.log, I'm going to get the value of this p. So I'll say p, which is this variable, dot, and maybe I should just say text, T-E-X-T, text content. So the content is going to be capitalized. If I go ahead and save, watch what happens in the console. So you see, p.text content is telling me JavaScript is awesome. What if we wanted to do h1.text content? So I can come here and I do h1 and save. Let's see what we get. Hello world. And of course, if you do h2, you will still get hello world because it's just selecting it by the class name. So I just hope you see now that we have been able to select an element on the page. That's something that you're going to do every time, right? You're going to create variables, and these variables will be able to select elements on the page. Great. So permit me to get rid of this. And I was about to talk about another way we can select elements on the page. Supposing we wanted to select the 3 elements here on this page, these 3 paragraphs. How do you go about doing that? Or maybe you had a class, you know, that you attached to all of them and you wanted to select everything. Well, there are different ways you can do that, but one very common way is by using what is known as query selector all. Okay, so if I do query selector all, and let me save that, Oh, so I can't have two variables p, so let me just say p all. Okay, and I come here and I do a console.log and I say let's see, how am I going to log this? So I'm just going to say p all, right? And I'll do a console.log of this variable I created, p all, and then I'm going to save that. So basically, when you select an element on the page using query selector all method, it will create what is known as a node list. What that node list means is that it will select all the elements on the page that correspond to this element you are targeting. So if I open this node list here in the console, you'll see that we have 3 paragraphs, index 0, 1, and 2, but at least the length is 3 paragraphs. Do you understand? If you do pl.length, you get 3 because we already have that here. Okay, so now that we have a node list, a node list, what we do on an array can also be done on a node list because it's just a group of elements. So if you see around it here, you see that it's wrapped in square brackets. So it's like an array, even though it's called a node list. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create a for loop and I'll loop through this variable here that is selecting all the paragraphs on this page. So I'll come here, I'll say for, and first off, we need to initialize the variable. How do we do that? We say let I, and I'll set it to be equal to 0 first off. I'll now say that I'll set the condition for which this for loop will run. So I'll say I is less than or equal to p all dot length. Okay, so that's the condition. So as long as I is less than or equal to p all dot length, this loop will keep running, and then I would then increment and say I plus plus. Okay, now inside of this loop, right, I'll do a console.log. So let me do a console.log. Inside this console.log, I want to log out p all, but I want to log out the ith item. In other words, each of the individual items inside this p all, that's what I want to log out. So if I go ahead and save that now, watch what happens. So you see, first of all, we have this node list here, right? We have this node list here which is this first console.log. Let me just comment it out and try this again. So great. So here you see now that we now have this JavaScript is awesome. In other words, we have the 3 paragraphs, JavaScript is awesome 1 and 2, which corresponds to what we have on the page. So basically, what we did with looping through an array, we've done that on a variable we created with query selector all, which created a node list. So we've done that on a node list. Okay, so I just wanted to point out that very quickly. So there are other ways you can actually select element on the page, but you see these 3 I've showed you, they are the very common ones: query selector, get elements by ID, query selector all. There is get elements by class name, there's get elements by tag name, and stuff like that. So you feel free to do your own research and see the other ways you can select an element on a page. Now that we've been able to select an element on a page, okay, there's one more thing I should have showed you. You can also use query selector to select either a what's it called? You can use it to select either a class or an ID. I've shown you how to select a class. All you need to do is add a dot. To select an ID, all you need to do is add the hash symbol. So just like it applies in CSS. If I come here now, where's the query selector? This one that selects the H2. If I wanted to select the H2 using the ID, all I need to do, if you come here, you see that this H1 actually has an ID of head. All I need to do to select that using query selector is I just need to change this to hash. So where's my hash? Hash and then head. Okay. By this way, I'm selecting it by the ID. What this means invariably is that you can actually use query selector and you can actually just stick to query selector. If you like, you can go with get element by ID, but I'm just letting you know that you can use query selector to select either a class, an ID, or even an element tag, kind of. Okay, so of course I'll get rid of this. So now the next thing we want to do is we want to learn how to listen for events on the page, how to listen for events and how to add event listeners. Okay, so there's an event is anything you can do on a page, right? If you scroll on a page, if you can scroll on a page, that's an event. If you can click a button, if you can, move your mouse, that's an event. Anything you do on a page is considered an event. So permit me to comment this out. Okay, I'm trying not to delete anything on the page. So now, how do you add an event listener on your page? So I think I would bring all of this down. So I'll create a variable that will select the button, and since we've already done get element by ID, let me just delete this so that the page is small. Okay, so now let's create a variable that will target the button. Okay, so on the page we have I'll name this variable btn, and it's going to have a class of .btn. What am I selecting? I'm selecting this button here. Sorry, where is it? This button here with a class of btn. Okay, that's one. Next, I think I'm going to select the div, the empty div with a class of content. Okay, so let me just quickly do that. So I'll say content, and I would also replace that here. Okay, so I've created another div with a class of content. So basically I've selected these two elements here. Great. Now let's use this guy to walk through. It says JavaScript can change HTML elements in a page. Great. So now let's see how we can change the HTML elements in a page. So to make my page a little bit easy, I'll just get rid of these two paragraphs. Okay, so basically we just have h1, a paragraph, and then this stuff. Now let's use let's add an event listener first on the page. Okay, because to do anything on the page you have to listen for an event. So I'll come here. I want to add an event listener on this button such that when you click on this button something happens. So I've created a variable for the button. So here, to add an event listener to that button, I'll say button dot add event listener. Okay, and then I would open parenthesis. This is going to take two parameters, so p, or let's just say p1 and p2. The first parameter represents the event you want to listen for. Now in this case we simply want to listen for a click, because remember we said that whatever you do on a page can be considered an event. So we're listening for a click. The next parameter is what you want to do. Okay, so what do you want to do when the button is clicked? Well, what we want to do, we can put it inside a function. So what do we want to do? We said we want to change the HTML elements in a page. So, and we've already selected all the elements here. We've selected the h1, the paragraph, and even this p all. Well, we don't need this p all again, so I may as well, I can just leave it there anyway. So but we've selected the elements. Now I want to call a function that will change something, the elements on a page. So here I'll say change. The name of that function will be change elements. Okay, I'll just say change L, just make it short. So that's the function I want to call when this button is clicked. Okay, great. So I'll come down here and I'll create that function. So here I will say the name of the function I've already set to change element, so I need to start by using the function keyword. Now remember that when we talked about function, we said there's a regular function, ES5 function, which we can declare using the function keyword, and then there's also what is known as the arrow function, which we saw also. So but then I'll just stick with ES5 function and say change elements, and basically what this is going to do is that it's going to change. I want to change this hello world to hello, and I'll put my name there. So I'm going to select this element. We've already selected this element. It's stored in this variable called h1, right? So I'm going to then say h1, which is this guy, and then I want to change the text. So I'll say h1 dot I'll say text content. Okay, I want to change the text content. So h1.text content, and I'll change it to something else, so a string. So let me just say, I'll just make it different. So I'll say new heading. Okay, great. Maybe I'll add a few exclamation marks there, and I'll save. Okay. Okay, so we have an error here. It says that click is not defined. Okay, so apparently I made some mistake here, and it's a simple mistake really, because anytime you are writing an expression that is not meant to be either a variable or a function, you need to wrap it around quotes. Okay, so I'm supposed to listen for a click, and it's supposed to be in quotes. Okay, while this change element is actually this function here, so we can just write it like this. Okay, so that's it. So if I go ahead and save, watch what happens. So if I come here now and I click on submit, what do you expect is going to happen? Well, let me explain. If I click on this submit on this button, it's going to call this function to change elements, and this is the function we created here. Inside this function, we are simply just changing the h1 text content to new heading, new string. Okay, new heading. So I'll go ahead and save that, and I'll click on the button. Bam! So we've changed hello world to new heading. That's amazing, right? So that's one of the first thing we can do. So let's just quickly go through the list. It says HTML can change JavaScript can change HTML attributes. So I don't think I actually want to go into this now. Maybe when we do a project, we'll do that. Let's instead focus on this third one. JavaScript can change CSS styles. Amazing. So let's come here. So what I'm going to do is, let me refresh this page, right? And I want to change the color of this heading to something else. So first off, I'll come to, okay, I think I'll just do it from JavaScript. Okay, so I'll say that when you click on this button, we want to change this to a different color, specifically red. So because I don't want to get rid of this guy here, I'm just going to comment it out so that you can have it, but then I'll change this to change color. So it's a new function. So what that means is that I'll have to create a new function, and the name of that function is going to be change color. We've already set it, we've already called it here, so we must have the same name, and then I would create the function. Now you notice that I'm not adding any parameter, any arguments for the function. That's because not all functions should actually needs to have an argument. Okay, all right. So basically, how do we change the color? So we've saved the variable inside h1, so I'm going to say h1 dot, I want to change the style, so I'll say h1 dot style. And what style do I want to change? Specifically, I want to change the color, so I'll say dot color, color, and I'm going to set it to, what is the color I need? I need red. I'll go ahead and save that, and if we click here, watch what happens. Voila, so the color has changed to red. We can even change the color of this button. So it's not just about the color, we can change any style we want, right? So for example, I can change the font size. So here I will say h1.style.font hyphen size, right? This is how you write it in regular CSS, but in JavaScript, when you want to write a CSS property that has like two words, you have to use what is known as camel casing. What that means is that you get rid of the hyphen, and you make the first letter of the second word, you capitalize it. So font size. Now the default font size, I'm not sure I remember the default font size for a h1, but I'm just going to make it maybe something, I'll just say something like maybe 50 pixels, 50 px. Okay, px needs to be small letter, and then I'll go ahead and save. So basically, we are doing two things here. We're changing the color to red, and we're changing the font size to 50 pixels. Let's try and see what that happens. Voila. So you see, we changed the color to red. We also increased the size. So that's us using HTML to using JavaScript to change the style of an element on the web page. Let's see the next one. It says JavaScript can remove existing HTML elements and attributes. Okay, so we're going to stick with elements right for now. How can we remove an existing HTML element? So let me comment this out, and I'm going to create another function. This one is going to be let me say hide elements. So I'll say hide elements, hide L. I think hide L is better. I'll copy that and I'll come and create a new function, and I'll hide L, and then I'm also going to use the styling thing. So basically what I've got to do is I'll say h1 dot style, and then I'll set the display and set it to CSS property none. If you go ahead and save, right, when you click on this button, what happens? This should be hidden from the page. So I'll click on it, and as you can see, it's hidden from the page. Of course, if you refresh the page, it shows up back, but if you click on it, it deletes. So there's a concept called local storage, right? It's one of the web storage APIs. I know we've not talked about what an API is, right? But there's what we can do such that when you delete an element and you refresh the page, that element stays deleted. Okay. All right. So what do we have next? JavaScript can remove. Okay. JavaScript can add new HTML elements. Amazing. So let's see how we can do that. That's a little bit complex, but we're going to have fun learning it. Okay. So we're going to say add elements. Okay. Great. So if you come to your index.html, you see that we have this content. It's an empty, it's a div with a class of content and it's empty. If I add something there and I save, you'll see it's written right here, right? Okay, great. So let me just delete it and see how we can add elements to this empty div. So I'll come here, and when I click on this button, I want to add something to the empty div. So I'll create a function. I'll call that function add elements, and I'll open it up, and I'm just going to get the content here. So I'll say, because we've created a variable that selects that content on the page, so I'll say content, sorry, that should be small letter. So I'll say content dot, and I'm going to set the inner HTML. Okay, so we've seen text content. I can actually do text content and set it to hello there, something like this, and then I'll save. And when you click on this button, remember everything we are doing is an event listener we added to this button, right? It's calling this function. So if I click on this button, watch what happens. So we now have hello there, right? Great. Now there is another thing I almost did right now. I call this inner HTML. If I do inner HTML and save and click on the button, I get identical results. The only difference is that I can actually take an full HTML element and append it and add it to this my code here. Okay, I don't want to say append, that's a different thing entirely. So what I gotta do is I'm just gonna copy this full HTML. JavaScript is awesome. I'll copy it here. I'll come to my app.js, and instead of just adding this text here, I'm going to add the HTML like this. JavaScript is awesome. And you know the interesting thing, let me save it first and let's try it out. You see JavaScript is awesome, but how do we know that this is actually working? This paragraph tag actually takes effect. I'm going to change this to a h2 tag, so it's definitely going to be bigger. So let me save that and let me click on the button. Watch what happens. So you see now we have something that is h2. So basically inner HTML can factor in this HTML tag, right, as we use it in our code. Okay, so let's see what we have next. We have JavaScript can react to existing. So that's basically what we've been doing. Existing HTML event. We've been reacting to a click. That's what we did when we add an event listener. So that's basically what that means. The last one here is JavaScript can create new elements on a page. Okay, great. So let's see how we can create a new element. This one, we just added a new element, right? So what I got to do is I got to delete this. And inside of this function, let's go ahead. Okay, so I got to change this to, I need to preserve this for you. Control Z, and I'll just comment it out. And here I'll say create L. Okay. So I'll come down here. I'll create a function to create L. Open that function and like that. So what I got to do is, first off, I want to create an element. I'm going to create a variable and call that element h2. Okay. And then I'll say that h2 variable is equal to documents. See, we are talking about document object model. So many things are starting with documents. So documents dot, and then I'll say create elements. What kind of elements do I want to create? I want to create a h2. So I'll say h2, that's what I want to create. So I've created this element, fine. Of course, if you do a console.log, you get h2 here. Okay. Now, but this h2, it doesn't have any content. So what I got to do now is I'll say h2, which is this variable I created, dot text. Oh, sorry, I need to add a dot. So dot text content, and I'm going to set that to just something. Let's just say a new element. Okay, great. Now I've been able to add some text to the new h2 element I created. How do I make this h2 element display on the page? Well, I want it to display inside of this empty div that has a class of content. So what I can do is I will say content. So content, and then I will append it. So I'll say content dot append child. Okay, so you know an element can have elements inside it, and when that occurs, those elements within it, they are called the children, right? So I'll say content dot append child, and what do I want to append? Well, I want to append the h2 element I just created. So I'll say I'll say h2, right? And I'll close. If I go ahead and save this, right, everything is set. Now let's see if we can actually do this, pull this off. So I'll click on submit and watch what happens. You see, we have a new element. So basically, we've gone through all of these things we said JavaScript can do, except for changing the HTML attributes. Okay, so I think I'll just find an example that we can use to change an HTML attribute, right? But let's just continue. Now there's the challenge. I'm going to give us a challenge here now. Now, instead of just appending this text here, this h2, everything created inside of JavaScript, can we do it such that we write something here? So let me just increase the font size a little bit. Oh, it's not even increasing. Can we do it such that we write something here like maybe my name, AK Zeno, and when we click on submit, this name we wrote here is displayed here instead? Well, that's a challenge, and I want you to actually do some Googling. If this is not something you've done before, go ahead and Google, but I want you to pause the video and try it out. Okay, even if you have to research and do what you know, check the answers online, but just go ahead and try it out. First off, see what you need to do. You have an input, you have a button. When you click on that button, we want to get the value of that input and display it somewhere on the page. That's it. Okay, so pause the video, try it out, then come back and see my own solution. All right, I'm going to give you my own solution right now. All right, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to select this input elements we have on the page, and we give it an ID of input. Okay, so I'll come here and I will actually choose to select it using what's going on here. Okay, I went down. I would actually choose to select it using get elements by ID. Okay, so I'll come here. I would create a variable const. What am I doing? Const, and I'll just say inputs, and I'll set it to be equal to documents, document dot get element by id, and the id I'm interested in is the one I set in the HTML, so that's inputs, specifically this, where is it again? Oh, this id here. Okay, that's what I'm targeting. So great, so I've been able to select that. Good. Now I'm going to comment out this function, right? And I'm going to change it here. So the function that will, get this input and append it on this page, I'll call it, I'll say get input. Okay, great. So I'll come down here and I'll create a function, and the name of that function, of course, we've already set to get input. So let's open the function. So first off, what do we want this function to be able to access? Well, the very first thing is that we want this function to be able to access whatever it is we type into this input field, which I can call the value of the input field. So here, I'll come here and I'll create another variable. I'll call that variable input value. And I'll set it to be, actually, I like to actually just call it input val. Okay. So I'll say input val and I'll set it to this input here. So I'll say input, that's the variable we set, dot value, and I'll close. Sorry, I'll close. Now, if we come here and do a console.log of input val, which is this new variable we created, let's see what happens. So I'm going to save, and inside of here, I'm going to type something. So let me just type my name, Zeno. I don't know what's wrong with my typing. So Zeno, and then I'll click on submit. What do you actually expect that would happen? So I'll click on submit, and in our console.log we have Zeno, which is what we did here. Of course, if we come here and we change it to maybe something wherever, and we submit, we now have Zeno and my surname, which is apparently not spelled correctly, but that's fine. So basically, we've gone through the first step, which is being able to at least get the value of what is in the input. Great. Now, what we want to do is we want this value to be able to want to display this value in the page just below this inputs. Okay, we want to display the value on the page, and we have an empty div that has a class of contents, which is this one we created here. So great. So let's come here. Now we're going to say that contents dot, let's just use text content, right? And we're going to set it to input val. So the value of the input is going to be what we then set as the text content of whatever it is we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and let's try it out. So I'll save and let's try it out. So I'll come here, I'll type in something. So let's do JavaScript and submit. Voila. So we have JavaScript right here. Now there's one more thing like I would like us to do, right? When we append the content of this input here, is it possible for us to delete the value inside of this input field? Let's make the input field empty. Well, yes, that's possible. What we need to do is we'll come here and we'll say input val, and we'll set it to be equal to an empty string, and then we'll save. So let's go ahead and try it one more time. So I'm just going to type in my name, Zeno, and I'll submit. So there's a problem. Assignment to a constant variable. Okay, great. So here, remember we created this variable, we used the const keyword. I'm happy we ran into this error. Remember we said a const variable, it cannot be redeclared. In other words, you cannot come and declare another const variable. It cannot be reassigned. You cannot change the value. So basically what we need to do is we need to change this const to let, right? Because let can be reassigned, right? Which is what the problem we have here. Assignment to a constant variable, let can be reassigned. So I'll go ahead and save, and let's try this one more time. So I'll say Zeno and submit. and now we have Zeno here. The only problem is that the value of this input is not clearing out. So let me see. So what I think I want to do here now is I'm actually just going to get rid of this input.value, and I'm going to use this input.value keyword word instead, right? Instead of using the variable that represents it. So I'll copy that and I'll say input.value is equal to an empty string, right? And then I'll save. Of course, if you go ahead and let's try it out, I'll say Zeno, and if I click submit, voila, so we have Zeno displayed here and we have an empty input field. Okay, so those are some of the things you can do with DOM. Okay, there's a lot more you can do with DOM, with the document object model. A lot of that will be covered in the 100 days of JavaScript, because you're going to be practicalizing what you've learned so far, and you're going to be learning more as you build projects. Okay, but I think for now I think we can actually stop here as far as DOM is concerned. All right, so see you in the next one. Okay, so having talked about the document object model, right? If you look on our diagram, you see that everything actually starts from the window object. Okay, so there's something known as the browser object model, BOM. Okay, so anyway, let's actually see what the window object is. So if I do a control.log and I come here and I say window, okay, and then I go ahead and save. Oh, I need to be on this guy here, and let me just drag this up a bit. So you see we have something here in our console, right? And that is the window object. The window object is the object at the top. So if I open this up, right, watch what happens. It will show me all the properties of the window object, and there are so many. So previously we saw alerts, right? We saw we can do an alert. I think we've not seen so much, but we've seen some. We've seen I have a tutorial on my channel where we talk about this connection. We can access the camera. Let me scroll down. There's something I want to talk about. On scroll, I'm looking for on scroll. Let's see. Okay, well, I can't exactly find the on scroll. I wanted to say something about on scroll, but basically with this window object, right, we can track everything that happens on when you open your browser. Okay, the window object actually represents the full browser that you're working with. That tab that is open, the window object is what is on top of it. Okay, and with that you can you can change so much. Many of these things are events. So you see, on mouse down, that's an event. On mouse enter, right, there are so many events and so many properties of the window object. On scroll, right, that's an event. Okay, so basically by doing a console.log, you can get all the properties of the window object here, and some what's it called, some events, window object events that you can actually track here too. And the thing I want to point out is that you see, in our 100 days of JavaScript course, we work with so many of this stuff, right? I'm also going to leave a link in the description to some projects that I've built here on YouTube, so you can actually start testing out. Okay, but I actually encourage you to get the 100 days of JavaScript course. It will definitely help you sharpen your skills in JavaScript with the basics you've actually learned in this video. Okay, and please if you're going to get the course, get it with the link in the description. Like I said earlier, that's the only way I actually get what you pay for. All right, so that's about it. We're going to see you in the next lecture. So in this one, we are going to talk about objects. Okay, in when we talked about data types, like we saw that there were two main divisions when it comes to main classifications for data types. We saw the primitive data types, where we have things like strings, numbers, and stuff like that. And then we saw the non-primitive data types, or reference data types, and we said that they are basically objects. Okay, so now let's see how we can create an object, and then we'll then talk about why knowing how to work with objects is important. Okay, so first off, I'm going to start by creating an array. Okay, and here I'll say const. Sorry, I'll say const. I'll just say array, or let me just say users. right? Users plural because it's an array, and inside of this array I'm just going to add maybe 3 names. So I'll say Zeno, and I'll say Donald. What do I do this stuff? So Donald, and I will then say John. So here you see that we are creating, and we've created an array of 3 users. But you see, there's a limitation of arrays, right? What if we wanted to also have access to not just the username? What if we wanted to have access to the user's surname, for example, or the user's age? You know, something like that. That's where objects come in. So here I'm going to create an object called person, and I'm also going to do that using the const keyword, and I'm just going to say person. Okay, and I'm going to set it to be equals to, and what I'm about to do is known as object literal. So I would open this up and come here. Now, what is the main difference between a non-primitive data type or a reference data type like an object and a primitive data type like a string? The difference is that an object can have both properties and methods. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to give this object a property. Okay, the first property we're going to give this object is the user's first name. Okay, the user's first name, and I'm going to set it to Zeno. It's going to be it's a string, so it's going to be like this. Now, if I want to give this, if I want to get the value of this user's last name, all I need to do is add a comma, and here I'm just going to say last name. Then I'll then specify the user's last name, which is, oh come on, what is going on here? Okay, which is, that's my last name. Okay, then I can also specify the user's age. So here I would say age, and age is a number, so it doesn't need to be in a string, so I'll just say 27. So far we've been able to get some data for this user. The question is, how can we actually access this data? We saw that we could loop through an array. We could, you know, display the values inside of an array. How can we get access to this data? So what I'm going to do is Control Z. What I got to do is I'm going to do a console.log. So I'll just do a console.log to make things faster. And to access these users, let's just start with the user's first name. What I need to do is I'll say person dot. Okay, so I'll use the dot notation and first name. Okay, that's how you access this user's first name. If I go ahead and save that, you see in our console.log we now have Zeno. If I change this to person.age and save, you see in the console.log we have what's it called, 27. Great. Now let's talk about methods. We've said that all of these items you see here, they are properties of this object. What is a method? A method is a function inside of an object. So I'm going to come here, I'll say function, and the name of this function is going to be full name. Okay, and basically what I'm going to do with this function is that I think I did something here. So I think I started typing too fast. So it actually needs to be full name. It's like we're defining another property. So full name, right? And then we're then going to specify a function keyword. Now this is a typical example of an unnamed function. You know, in the previous lectures where we're using function, we say function and then we give it a name. So but in this one we're not going to give it a name. We're just going to say function, and then we're going to open it up like that. Okay, now what do I want to do? I want to be able to access the user's full name. So I'll return. Now this is now introducing us to a new concept, which is the this keyword. I'll return what is known as this dot, and then I'll access the first name. So this actually signifies this object that we are working in right now, right? So instead of saying person dot whatever, I'll just say this dot, and then I'll just say first name, And what I got to do is I'm going to append it, or sorry, I'm going to concatenate it using the plus sign. I'll give it a space, and I'll then say this dot last name. Okay, great. So this is what I want to do with this function, and I'll close it here. So what happens if we come to our console.log, and instead of saying person.age, you know what? Instead of saying person.age, I'll say person.full name, and then I'll save. Watch what happens in our console.log. I'm getting return. What's going on here? So the issue we're having here displaying this code is because this is a method, and a method is actually a function inside of an object. Okay, so here we have to add the parenthesis to specify that we are calling a function inside of an object, or we are calling a method. So if we go ahead and save that one, now watch what happens. Suddenly we can now display our full name Zeno Akpareva inside of our console. Okay, so I think this is the basics for how we can work with objects. Okay, now in ES6, ES 2015, we were introduced to classes. Okay, and classes is just, you know what, let me not just talk about it. We're going to start afresh and talk about classes, okay, in the next one. Okay, so now we're going to talk about classes, and like I said, classes were it's a concept that was introduced in ES6. Okay, and we're going to see what it does. Okay, so let me just add a comment here and say, I'll just say ES6. Oh, sorry, that should be capitalized. So I'll say ES6 classes. Great. Now, what is a class? A class is a template for creating an object. We've seen how to create a simple object in JavaScript, right? Now, this class we're talking about now is a template for creating such kind of objects, right? And we create a class using the class keyword, right? So this class keyword is a reserved word in JavaScript. Now let's see how we can create a class. So I'll use that with a class keyword, and I'm going to create a class called person, just like I did in the objects lecture. Yeah, person. Now, but when we are creating a class, you always capitalize it. It's just a convention in JavaScript, right? To make the first letter capital when you are creating a class. So here I'm going to add my curly braces and open it up. Now the next thing you need to define is the properties for this class. Just like we did in the object, we defined some properties: first name Zeno, last name, and then we even we created a method, full name. Great. So now to define a property, to define properties in a class, you need to use a keyword known as constructor. So we call it the constructor keyword, this particular word, right? And you need to add your parentheses, and then inside of this block is where you then specify the properties for the class you are trying to create. Okay, now we're going to do something similar to what we did here. We're going to create the first name and the last name. I'm going to leave the age. I'm not doing anything with it, right? So first name and last name. Unlike in the object, you need to actually add some parameters here, and those parameters will represent the properties you want to create inside of this class. So if I want to create, let's say, first name, I'm just going to say f name just to make it short, and L name, which represent the last name. So inside of this constructor, to then create the properties, I will now say, you know what, maybe I'll just do it first name, just so that just so that it makes sense, and last name. Okay, let's just do the right thing. So here I will then create those properties. I'll say this dot first name, and I'll set it to be equal to first name. Okay, I'll close it, and then I'll say this dot last name, and I'll set it to be equal to last name. Okay, so when creating a class, this is how you create properties inside the class. So now this class has two properties, first name and last name. Now, how do we access the properties of this class? Well, we can create a what's it called, an object from this class, right? You know, the first thing we said is that a class is a template for creating objects. Okay, I think I actually need to have a slide for that. Well, it's something we can arrange. Anyway, I'll come here, right, and I will say to create an object out of this class, I'll say const, and I'm just going to name that object person1. Okay, and I'll set it to be equal to. Now, to create an object out of a class, there is a word we need. That word is called new. So we use the new keyword. So I want to create a new object from this person class. So I'll say new person. Okay, I would open a bracket, and I would then define the first name and the last name of this person1 object. So in what's it called, strings, my first name is Zeno, and then I'll add a comma, and my last name I'll say Akpareva. Okay, so that's it. Great. So now this is how you can create a new object out of an existing what's it called, class. But very quickly, let's see how we can create a method. So now we've created some properties using the constructor keyword. We added some properties. Let's see how we can create a method, right, to return the full name of this person. So I'm going to come here, and instead of saying using the function keyword, right, I'm just going to say full name, straight up full name, right, and open my parenthesis, and inside my code block I will then return. So I can say I want to return, let's say, this dot first name, right? I can concatenate that with, so I'll do plus, I'll do an open string, and then I'll do another plus and say this dot last name, right? And this will work, right? But instead of doing this stuff, I remember I did it in the lecture on objects. Instead of doing this stuff, right, let's just fall back to that our template literals lecture. You know, we did a lecture on template literals. So I'll just come here like this. Let me just delete everything, and I'll do my template literals like this. And inside of this, my template strings or template literals, I would just say I'll add my $sign to and my curly braces because I want to write an expression. And inside of this expression, I will say this dot first name, and then I'll just leave a space, and then I'll repeat the same thing and say this dot last name. Initially, it may look like this is more complex, but as you start writing, code frequently, you see that this is actually easier for you to write, right? Instead of concatenating empty spaces and all of that, you can just do this. Now we've created a new person object, right? We've created an object out of this person class. Now let's see how we can access the full name. So what I gotta do is I gotta come down here, and I'm gonna do a console.log of, so it's going to be this person1. So I'll say person1 dots, and then I would access this method full name. So I'll say full name. Oh, full name, this should actually be capitalized. Okay, camel casing. Not like it will not work if you don't do it, but I mean, it's just so because it's a function, because it's a method which is a function inside a class, I would add my parenthesis. And guess what? Let me go ahead and save. Oh, we have Zeno Akpareva already. Oh, I want it to be different. So let me just make this my full name, Ewoma. My full name is actually very long, so Ewoma Zeno. Okay, so I'll go ahead and save this and watch what happens. So you see here now in our console, we now have Ewoma Zeno Akpareva, which is from this new person object we just created, right? So I think that's about it for the basics about how we can work with classes. Like there are other stuff you need to know about classes really, but I think this is the basics for your beginning. You're starting out, you should actually know this basic stuff. Okay. So I'll see you in the next. All right, guys. So now I want us to talk about a very important concept in JavaScript, and it's APIs and HTTP requests. Okay. So basically, many of the things we do as front end developers, right, is we need to be able to access some data on somebody's server. Okay. And we do that using the concept of APIs, application program interface. That data is actually stored in an API and we can access it using different approach. One of them is using the fetch API. Okay, so fetch. Now there are other services that we can use to access data, using HTTP request and what is known as asynchronous JavaScript methods. But I will not want to go into that because I already made an extensive video right about APIs, HTTP request, fetch, and all of that. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave a link in the description so that you can actually go and sit down on that video, and it will teach you a lot about APIs and HTTP request and even fetch API and all of that. Okay, so that's what I encourage you to do. So I'll leave a link in the description. It's a free video on YouTube here that I did prior to this one, so just go ahead and feast on it and enjoy yourself. Okay, so we're going to talk about the next concept I would like us to talk about is local storage. Okay, working with local storage. Okay. I also have a video here on YouTube where I break down local storage. Okay, and I also I think I also do justice to it in our 100 Days of JavaScript course, right? Local storage is something that you really need to know, okay, because it's so interesting to work with. Okay, so that's one of the things I'm also going to leave in the description. We're going to build a to-do app and a notes app with and integrate it with local storage. Okay, all right. So there are so many other things you need to learn as a JavaScript developer, right? But let me just tell you right now, right? You don't need to know everything at once. Okay, there is nobody that knows all of JavaScript, right? We are all still learning, and if you have that mindset that you're a developer and you're gonna keep learning, that's the first step to having an amazing career in web development. Okay, it's a learning process, it's a continuous learning process. Okay, so but I believe that with some of the things I've mentioned in this video, you should be able to have all of the basics under your belt, and as you keep building projects, there are so many other things you would encounter. Okay, all right. So once again, I think this is the point where I want to thank you. So let me actually do a proper thank you for sitting with me through this JavaScript crash course. So I'm thanking you guys for sitting with me through this JavaScript crash course. We've done one on HTML, we've done one on CSS, and this is our JavaScript crash course. I hope that you're able to learn something at least from what I was able to say in the in the video. It's quite long, and I hope to see you build projects with me in our 100 Days of JavaScript course. All right, thank you so much, and see you in another video. Make sure you subscribe. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, and see you later, guys. Topic.